Okay, what's going on, everybody? We have a space and rocket launch review here. It's Friday. It's June 26th, 2026, and this is the space and rocket launch review. What's going on, everybody? I'm EJ. How are you? Yeah, today, so what I was doing right before I went live on YouTube here was, so I do work for a I do side work for a company called NASA Spaceflight. They're a space news journalism outfit, and on Fridays I host. Not host. I'm a participant in the Flame Trench, which is their NSF's like informal weekly news show. I host that with not Jack. We did host one with Jack 2 weeks ago, but we host that with Sawyer and Max. To my buddies over there. What I was doing is I was rereading the OIG report from the last space news. That's not the right computer. I was reading the OIG report again, and it's not ideal. Yeah, this is, I was reading, what I was finishing up is particularly the Halo, the Habitation and Logistics Outpost section. It's, but yeah, the conclusions here. Yeah, the guys, so the Habitation and Logistics Outpost for Gateway, I went and reread this. Yeah, this is some of the assets that I want Kevin to show. I want him to show him pictures of it being delivered. What screwed that program was taking it off SLS. Honestly, in a bid to save money, they got rid of SLS co-manifesting. They took it out of the mission scope, and they switched Gateway's Halo module, so that's the HAB module, Habitation and Logistics Outpost, and the power and propulsion element to a Falcon Heavy launch. Honestly, that screwed the program. Like, that screwed Gateway pretty badly. Halo wouldn't have flown on Block 2. It would have flown. Power and propulsion element was originally supposed to be Artemis 3, I think, and then Artemis 4 was supposed to be the Halo module. Guys, honestly, this is the big conclusion that I'm coming to, and I'm just saying it for continuity over on YouTube. Look, the big problems, there's two big problems here from this OIG report, right? And the biggest problem here is that NASA didn't design any of this stuff. They contracted out to the design. With Apollo, even with the space shuttle, not even the space shuttle was contracted out to Rockwell, but with the Apollo program, they designed everything in-house. They designed the whole Saturn V rocket and then went to the contractors and said, hey, can you make this? Right? Here's the blueprints. Can you make this? We will pay you. They did all the development in-house and then procured stages under firm fixed price. Well, not firm fixed pricing. The Apollo program was cost plus because they weren't sure. They weren't sure if they needed to make changes to the stages and stuff, but they ended up doing firm fixed pricing for block buys of Saturn Vs. They bought 20 Saturn Vs to do this moon mission. With SLS, none of that happened.
Discovery.
The Universal Stage Adapter, the EUS, the Halo, Mobile Launcher 2, all farmed out design. NASA designed none of that in-house. And because of changing mission scope and requirements, and this is the second one, right? Because they changed the missions. Artemis 2 was supposed to be with the EUS originally. Now it ended up being ICPS, and now Artemis 4 was supposed to be the first EUS, and now we don't know, right? Well, now it's not. Now it's going to be nothing. It's going to be a Centaur or something. I don't know. Actually, it might be an ICPS. We don't know. But changing the scope and mission requirements here, and not designing any of this stuff in-house is the two biggest problems. Yeah, those are the two big ones, dudes. Hey, Big Body, 87-month resub. Don's on top, 9-month resub. Now, I can kind of give you a preview of what I'm going to ask Sawyer and Max here during Flame Trench. The big one is, how do we know this isn't going to happen again? So, in February of this year, Jared Isaacman and his crew, and Amit Shrathia and Lori Glaze and Carlos Garcia Galan, like basically the top shelf guys, that people at NASA, came up with NASA Ignition, which was a plan to change Artemis mission requirements and build change SLS's configuration to be more centered around sending people to the lunar landers, so Blue Moon Mark II and Starship HLS, right? How do we, like, dude, I trust Jared. I'm not trying to undermine him. I think I know what he's trying to do. I mean, we spoke to him for the 100th Flame Trench episode. I don't really, there's no evidence to say that this won't happen again. But with the landers, the Centaur upper stage adapter, so the standardized SLS, there's no, I mean, now to be fair, Jared didn't shelve any programs like what Jim did in 2019. He didn't shelve any programs for use later. He just got rid of them. But there's no evidence to state that this won't happen with the landers. This exact problem won't happen with the landers. You're changing the scope of the landers. Blue Moon Mark II and Starship HLS, up until February, were going to rectilinear halo orbit. Now they're going to low lunar orbit. Well, we don't know where Blue Moon Mark II is going to go. It might still get to NRHO. We don't know, right? Now, it's one thing to have overruns and delays. That's basically your one constant in spaceflight budgeting. Stuff's always going to take longer than you think it is. You can't predict the future. There's too many unknown unknowns. Rocket science is way too complicated. The other thing is that this now puts all the risk on SpaceX and Blue. If a NASA program underperforms like these, you can just pull the plug on it and you can change what you want, right? But now that the SLS program, SLS is kind of conjoined at the hip with Starship and New Glenn, you can't, what are they going to do? Cancel the Starship HLS project just at the first sign of it being delayed? Or cancel SLD, the Blue Moon Mark II lander? What's going to happen here, right? There's no evidence to say that this won't happen again, but with commercial this time. And if it happens with commercial this time, it's not like you can go to Congress and be like, this is overrun, cancel it, right? NASA didn't design Starship HLS. They didn't design Blue Moon Mark II. It's the same pattern. Like, there's no... And once again, guys, I'm basically going to repeat this on Flame Trench because it's good to get right in your head. Like, I'm not trying to doubt Jared. I like Jared a lot. And I'm pretty sure, and, Sawyer or Max weigh in on this. I'm pretty dang sure that he is, not hoping, that he's relying on commercial to pick up the slack and pick up the risk, because at this point, SpaceX has a bigger budget than NASA, which is, those are weird words to come out of my mouth, but they just did. I do civil design. Scope changes are expensive, and that multiplies when it's design build happening in parallel. Yes, exactly, Sydney. This is why NASA programs rely heavily on a critical design review. I'm not exactly sure how it works in civil engineering, but there's a CDR. The idea is that you buy down a lot of the risk and a lot of the unknown unknowns when you're designing the thing. And then when you actually go to make it, there is minimal amounts of changes, right? It's basically like studying really, really hard for a test, and when you go to take the test, it's super easy. You know, there might be 1 or 2 questions on the test that maybe you didn't take into account, but for the most part, you know, you can ensure that you're going to get a good grade, right? It will totally be changed again or otherwise canceled. Artemis will likely end after 5 or 6. I don't know. It was SpaceX and Blue that wanted to fly low lunar. It doesn't... Yeah, okay. I mean... Adrian, I'm not 100% sure how that has bearing on anything that I'm saying. It's not... I mean, I suppose I said that, you know, NASA is changing the scope, and Blue and SpaceX wanted to put their landers into LLO, low lunar orbit. But now is that still not changing the flight requirements? I mean, that's splitting hairs at this point, don't you think? Yeah, Phil, yeah. Aren't we seeing a shift where the landers dictate mission design instead of NASA? Well, Phil, that's why I said that first reason. All of these problems with all of these seemingly underperforming programs were changing the mission scope, right? Changing the mission scope, and NASA didn't design any of this in-house. NASA didn't build exactly what they wanted. So when they said, hey, design us this, and they said, all right, here's your stage, NASA went, no, that's not exactly what we want. And they said, okay, what do you want us to change? And like, well, we need to change this, 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 and this. And the contractor said, you know, that's going to cost more money, right? We don't do work for free. And NASA goes, oh, all right. Well, you should change it. Okay, we'll change it. You paid us more. When do you need this by? I don't know. And then all of a sudden, oh no, wait, it's 2024. So you, okay. The big thing is NASA not designing exactly what they need. That's huge. That's a huge thing. NASA never had a full overall architecture. It was just shuttle parts to get to the moon, asteroid, Mars. Yeah, exactly. They never had an end-to-end solution. Spoiled. And once again, that was because we de-scoped the Constellation program. Because it was going to take too long and it was underperforming. Do you guys notice a pattern here? Every single one of these programs is underperforming because of changing mission requirements, changing scope, cost overruns. But, you know, here's the thing, fellas. Some people are going to look at this and say, oh, these are just contractors milking the government. No, they're not. It's the government not having a plan. NASA doesn't even know what the scope of the project is because there's no end-to-end architecture. Really, it comes down to NASA not designing the full architecture for exactly what they need to complete our national goals. That's really what this comes down to. And it doesn't matter if it's... I was about to say it doesn't matter if it's contracted out or NASA does the design in-house. No, it really is about NASA designing this stuff in-house. Like, look at Dragon, for instance. Dragon is a good example of finding a happy medium here because NASA was using SpaceX's Dragon program as a sock puppet to denote exactly what they wanted. And there were times where SpaceX and NASA butt heads with the design, but ultimately they made a good vehicle, right? That's probably as good as you're going to get for a happy medium between a contractor and, you know, NASA being like, no, we want it to do this. No, never mind. We don't want touchscreens. We need some buttons. You know, like... But even then, like, SpaceX and NASA still agreed on the scope of what Dragon was designed to do. What's Dragon designed to do? Go up to the space station and back. That's it. That's its capability. Like, even now, do we necessarily have that clear of a goal with what the landers are supposed to do? What's HLS supposed to do? Well, it's supposed to refuel, then it's supposed to do this, and then it's supposed to do this, and then it's supposed to go to the surface, and then it can move 100 tons down there. When our goal is to just get back to the moon in 2028, put people on the moon in 2028. Starship is way out of scope there, and you're going to see some deferment in design changes. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, and I'm saying this as a SpaceX fanboy, I wouldn't be surprised if NASA has, tried to go to SpaceX and be like, hey, can you change something on HLS? And SpaceX going, no, go away. Honestly, like, just saying, like, based off of what I see, this OIG report is very telling about how NASA goes about doing business, or at least how they've gone about doing business over the last, well, basically since Constellation was canceled. Yeah, it's very telling, dude. This whole thing stems from NASA not designing the stuff. There's a reason why there's 2 launches in 28 planned, 1 with each landing. And for the first time, it's the contractors asking NASA to change things, and they are. Yeah, exactly, Bill. And that ends up canceling, projects that NASA would otherwise find useful, like ML2, Block 1B. Look, when I talked to Jared about the Artemis program, one of the questions I asked him was, why get rid of Block 1B? Don't you want a better upper stage for SLS? And he goes, no, we don't need it because we got rid of Gateway. It was supposed to co-manifest payloads, right? And that's fair in the applications to the Artemis program, but if NASA can't find a use for 100-ton, at least, well, actually, SLS Block 1B probably would have been more like 120 tons. If you can't find a use for a 120-ton super heavy launch vehicle to low Earth orbit, like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, my Discord account is compromised. Please remove Dama from your server. All right. My Discord's truncated right now because of streamer mode, or else you'd hear pop up, pop up, pop up, pop up every 5 seconds. Mods, if you could get on that. Thank you, drummer. Are you even sure that Block 1B was going to hit that 120-ton launch capacity? I mean, SLS Block 1 spoiled can do 100. NASA's teased that a couple of times. They haven't said it. They haven't, said it. They just said it, it's projected. So it's just a reasonable extrapolation based off of Block 1. They thought SLS Block 1 could move 70 initially, and now it's 120. Now it's 100. So that tells me that SLS Block 1B would have been in the ballpark of 120 to 130 tons. Hot take, and I'm going to say this with the space program in isolation. The end of the Cold War was bad for the space program. I can only imagine what advancements would have been made, or where we would be in the solar system if the Cold War continued. It's not our fault the Soviet Union's economic system sucked. I mean, yeah, I agree, but yeah, I don't know if that's our problem. But yeah, on the whole, I agree with you. Sad, you just realized SLS was on track to take 20 years to fulfill the 2010 NASA Authorization Act. That's the timeline the Augustine Commission thought Ares 5 would take. Yeah, Sad, the more I figure this out, the more I figure out that the Augustine Commission is, I'm going to be nice because it's in the day and I don't like swearing during the day, full of horse poop. Full of horse poop. The Augustine Commission's basis for funding programs, right? For funding programs and seeing them through, etc., was based off of no discernible metric other than we can save money, which is, yeah, go ahead. Nickel and dime your space program. Smart decision. That's always paid off. And I think they gave that to, to the president at the time, and he was none the wiser, because what does he know about the space program, right? Like, with the president, it's not the president's job to be an expert on this. He looked at it, and at face value, it looks like it makes sense. Like, yeah, if I didn't know about space and somebody handed me an Augustine Commission report, I would have been like, yeah, get rid of this. This is stupid, right? UK white papers. Yep. Like, I don't know what Norman Augustine's game is, but this isn't the first time he's done this. If you're an older viewer and you've been following the space program for some time, and it's funny you brought up the Cold War. He did this with Space Station Freedom. NASA had a revised baseline system and started manufacturing components for Space Station Freedom in the early 90s. And then Norman Augustine wrote a report on how it was going to be too expensive and how we can save money if we use Russian components. And then that's what got us the ISS. And de-scoped a vast majority of shuttle missions for Space Station Freedom assembly and delayed the project. Instead of Space Station Freedom components being launched in the early mid-90s, we did Shuttle Mir instead while we were waiting for the ISS project to get designed, because they had to figure out a way to hot rod the Russian modules, the Mir 2, what would have been the Mir 2 space station, to Space Station Freedom. And once again, with the Russian modules picking up the servicing missions, and the service module and the battery module, that de-scoped a bunch of shuttle missions. And that ended up making the shuttle more expensive because it flew less. Like, I don't know what this dude's game is. Like, I can't, do you like space or not? Like I can't figure it out. Like, and once again, I'll go back to what I said when we reviewed the OIG report the other day. You get what you pay for in spaceflight, guys. You get what you pay for. There's no cheap solution in spaceflight. The only solution to make spaceflight more affordable is to do it more. That's the only thing. Scale is the only way to beat this problem, unless we invent a hyperdrive from Star Wars. That's the only way to beat this problem. See, and once again, SpaceX understands this, right? Like, SpaceX understands it pretty dang well. And that's why what do you see Star Factory doing? They're trying to make an assembly line for spaceships. The only way to beat this problem is with scale. That's it. Falcon 9 has proved that. Scale will drive a lower cost dollar per kilogram to launch, dollar per kilogram to low Earth orbit. So it'll be cheaper if Falcon 9 flies more. But at the end of the day, you have to shoulder that cost. It's going to cost billions of dollars to get a rocket flying a lot, right? It costs a couple $1 billion for Falcon 9 to get to the level of Block 5. And that's not to mention all the support facilities that you need to build for it, pads, etc., etc. Like, you're not penny pinching your way out of this problem. And I don't understand why people think that is a thing. Like, I guarantee you guys, so if you're on YouTube, you know it's just us talking right now. When we watch Flame Trench, look at the chat when I say this. People are going to grill Bechtel, they're going to grill Boeing, they're going to grill Dynetics. Dynetics kind of deserves it, to be honest. They kind of deserve it. And they're going to grill Northrop Grumman, right? When in reality here, the problem is de-scoping missions to try and make spaceflight seemingly cheaper. NASA is going to save money by farming out the design. All that does is make more convoluted contracts, and it increases horizontal integration in NASA that's already mandated to be horizontally integrated to an extent. You're just making it more complicated. You're adding steps that don't need to be there. All under the guise of saving money. You're not penny pinching your way out of this problem. I'm sorry, you're not. That's the truth. SpaceX is spending billions of dollars on the Starship program right now. I wouldn't be surprised if Starship development total cost involved exceeds $30 billion. Now, I don't have any usable metric. Maybe as SpaceX discloses more of its financials because it's a publicly traded company over time, we can come up with a reasonable extrapolation for Starship development, 10 years prior. But yeah, dude, You're not penny pinching your way out of this. Augustine seems to think that you can in all of his reports, which is dumb. Like in the Augustine Commission report that was handed to the president that ended up getting Constellation canceled, they argued that it would be cheaper to man-rate Delta IV Heavy. Like, and then launch Delta IV Heavies off of a mobile launcher as a cheaper solution to Ares 1 because it already exists. But it completely ignores the human rating requirements. Delta IV Heavy was never intended to put people on it. It was not designed for that. It's using an ablative Hydrolox gas generator open cycle first stage engine. No engine out capability in the first stage, no engine out capability in the second stage. There's no human rating. What? Like, and to make the changes to make it a vehicle that would be safe enough to put an Orion into space basically would have amounted to the same amount of cost that it would have taken to just finish Ares 1. And keep in mind that part right there, what I just said, is not based off of any particular metric, right? Except the only resource that I have, or what the OIG would have, I think it was the OIG or maybe GAO, what they would have projected Ares 1 to end up, the development cost for Ares 1 over time. Ares 1 would have been a little bit delayed. They originally projected launch in 2015. I'll bet you it would have been like 2017 or 2018, something like that. Rocket Lab is online. All right, cool. We'll switch gears over to a Rocket Lab launch. This is 10 Owl a 10. This is an Electron rocket here on screen. He also had conflicts of interest as well, but he was put on due to being a big donor. That's right. Norman Augustine was the CEO of Lockheed. And then for whatever reason, in the Augustine Commission, he argued that Orion should, we should cancel all of the things that Orion launches on, but we should keep Orion. We should keep that, which Lockheed is the prime contractor on. That's not a coincidence. I'm sorry. That's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. But yeah, guys, I'm not trying to... Yeah, Regina, I don't blame you for being annoyed about this. I'm not trying to piss people off. Like, I've been trying to not go on rants, and I kind of did this when we read the OIG report the other day. Because me screaming into the void doesn't really solve any problems. What I've been trying to do is show this as a recognizable pattern that always kind of ends to what happens with ignition. It's been happening for 15 years. And that recognizable pattern is basically when someone comes around and says we can do stuff for cheaper, we could save money doing this. No, you can't. You can't. You're not going to save money until you send someone to the moon. Meaning that you have to build something first before you can reduce cost. And building something like an end-to-end solution for getting to the surface of the moon is going to cost money. It's going to take time, and it's going to take money to do it. You can't cut costs in development. You can't cut costs by farming your designs out to commercial. That's Dragon is the only success story in this regard. And even then, NASA had SpaceX under a magnifying glass through the entirety of commercial crew development in the late 20-teens, about 10 years ago. That is the one underlying problem. NASA has seemed to think that they could save money by doing less, by trying to farm stuff out to commercial, etc., etc. And instead of NASA shouldering the risk to open up commercial markets, right, to save money, they just pay people, they pay contractors to make the commercial market. Something that in Jared Isaacman's own ignition report, per Dana Weigel, the ISS program manager, is a failing strategy. So what makes us think that that's going to change? That's my big question. Like, I love Jared. I love what he does. I love what he's doing for NASA. But de-scoping NASA's in-house capabilities like this is not And once again, I'm sure Jared has a plan. I'm not trying to be like, I gotcha. I want to hear what the plan is as best as he can, explain it without a conflict of interest, right? Like, Rocket Lab is live for a launch. You guys just want me to see the title screen, or? So, I mean, it's just the title screen. All right, if you guys want to watch that, that's fine. But yeah, like, this is really something that I'm coming to realize. Like, NASA thinks they could just pay people to pay commercial contractors to shoulder all the risk for the success of their national space program. Like, even look at right now, all the risk, there's not risk with SLS. SLS works. The risk here is that you're going to run out of upper stages for SLS because we made a short-sighted decision 7 years ago to put SLS's development in the path of a rocket that was being phased out, Delta IV. But we did that because the Augustine Commission said that the first Artemis mission doesn't need a fully powered upper stage because it's just a test flight. We could save money by not developing the EUS for the Artemis 1 mission and maybe developing it for the Artemis 2 mission. See what I mean? It's just compromise after compromise after compromise to save money, to save money, to save money. And now you'll see it over the next couple of years. Everybody's going to grill SpaceX. I already see it happening. Everybody's going to grill SpaceX in blue for not being ready. They're the ones that are shouldering all the risk at this point, which is wrong. That is wrong. That's not NASA's job. NASA's job is to build what is not profitable for a company to build to grow commercial markets in the aerospace and aeronautics industries. That is their job. Because the risk being all on NASA means that if they fail, NASA doesn't go bankrupt because it's inherently government funded. Oh, there we go. Yeah, RJ, I think Jim was unfinished in his work when he left, and I think, yeah, we have repercussions from that, but yeah. Anyway, let's watch a rocket launch. EJ, are we going to have giant shipyards up in space? I don't know. Maybe. And I seem to think that the Centaur 5 thing isn't just about saving cost, it's also that it is more easily scalable than EUS in terms of production cadence. Correct. That's why Jared made that decision. Personally, said I would have gone to Blue. I would have gone to Blue Origin and said, make me an upper stage based off of GS2 for SLS. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway.
A brisk and early morning to you from the east coast of New Zealand as we count down to our next Electron launch from LC-1. Bit of a foggy one today, but there on Pad B stands our 91st Electron rocket, ready to carry its 10th dedicated mission to LEO for Japan-based Earth observation company, Spaceflight. We're about 20 minutes into the countdown to liftoff, set today for 5:43 a.m. local time. My name's Julian Spice, along with Grace and Leslie. We're joining you from Rocket Lab's Mission Control
Julian
Center
Spice.
right here in Auckland.
What a name.
Thanks, Julian.
Hell yeah.
It's been a clear run through the early morning operations, and we're tracking no issues across the launch vehicle since Spectre's payload
this is a
pulled
live
range,
launch, yes.
which sets us up nicely for an on-time launch. One thing we are keeping an eye on is the weather, which is a bit unsettled and could impact the launch. We'll find out closer towards T0. Otherwise, it's onward to launch for 10 out of 10. We're heading to a 552-kilometer low Earth orbit today with this mission called 10 out of 10 to mark our 10th constellation launch for Spaceflight for their Earth observation service, with Strix being the name of their satellites, as well as the genus for owls. You can see where the name comes from.
What a hoot. And I mean, the pun opportunities are endless, which is actually a good thing because we've got another 17 Spaceflight missions to name after this one to fit the owl theme. These missions are to establish Spaceflight's Strix constellation with SAR satellites by the end of this decade. In case you didn't know, SAR is a type of image capture technique which stands for synthetic aperture radar. This technology bounces radio waves off of landscapes and objects. Measurements of those radio waves are then stitched together to create imagery for use across industries like urban development, construction and infrastructure monitoring, and disaster response. Here's more from our friends at Synspective.
And seeing bunkers.
Synspective's mission
And
is
enemy bases.
to create a new infrastructure that enables the next generation to understand our Earth scientifically, quantitatively, and achieve a resilient future.
We probably can't listen to this because of the music, and it's probably already flagged the space news, so, you know, that's good. Moment of silence for the bot. But yeah, I don't know, guys. Yeah, we'll talk more about that during Flame Trench. Like, once again, I'm trying not to rant. I'm just trying to use this as so people understand. You know, like at face value, that OIG report looks like the contractors are to blame. And I've already seen news articles saying that it's Bechtel's fault or Boeing's fault. Oh, Boeing sucks. They're not what they used to be. And well, that is true. That's not the problem here. It really isn't. Two biggest problems. NASA doesn't design their own hardware, and mission changes. Mission changes from cost-cutting measures to try and do spaceflight for cheaper.
I did not write these, but we've got a few owl puns that we came up with during that clip if you want to hear them.
Yeah, okay, go on.
I'll never let you go. You're owl I need. Owl, yeah.
All right, add them to the list, but maybe don't give up your day job.
I don't think either of us have a career in comedy anytime soon, so I don't really have a problem with that. Okay, T-minus 17 minutes on the clock, and I think now is a great time to fill you in on our latest acquisition here at Rocket Lab. We've added robotic arms and other very cool tech to our lineup of hardware and capabilities. This technology is used for missions happening at Mars right now.
If you've ever seen photos of NASA's Perseverance rover searching for signs of past life on Mars, the technology that makes up that exact robotic arm is now under the same roof here at the lab. That makes us one of only a few companies in the world capable of delivering Mars missions across the entire spectrum. That's launch, spacecraft, software, and now Mars-proven robotics for surface and on-orbit operations. Here's more about the company and the technology that's joining us here at Rocket Lab.
The robotics that we brought on board here are going to enable not just missions, but a whole new diversified portfolio of components to proliferate into our spacecraft.
From a big picture perspective, Motive is bringing into the Rocket Lab family
sound, the music, the background music, guys. I'm sorry, there's no closed captioning either. They disabled it after the closed captioning started not understanding New Zealand accents and putting up very interesting closed caption statements. That is gear. That's a ring gear. I'll tell you that right now. And you confirm that Jesus is green. So, they said that it's the exact... hello. What is that? It looks like a flex plate. Those were the ring gear servo actuators for the arm. Thank God NASA didn't design it. There's a reason we haven't been to the moon for nearly 60 years. Yeah, Will, the reason is NASA hasn't designed the thing to get back to the moon because powers that be won't let them. It's too expensive. I would argue that it's not too expensive. If you're looking at cost of like the Apollo program compared to the shuttle program, you know, the shuttle program, even the shuttle program on paper looks like it's way cheaper, right? But the thing is, well, it is way cheaper. But did the shuttle go to the moon? No, it did not. Weird. Like it's cool that Rocket Lab is looking at bespoke robotic arms. That's super neat. And it looks like they have a whole robotics lab, which is Pretty cool. Once again, I can't play this because it has background music, and the background music, if it already hadn't, it will get claimed. They bought a robotics company. Oh. It unscrewed a cap. I assume the dust on the moon is more dangerous than dust on Earth. Rugine, lunar regolith, which is the nice way of saying lunar dirt or lunar soil or whatever, the ground on the moon. It's made up of, so all the things that hit the moon basically got pulverized when they hit the surface, and it created a fine powder, almost something the consistency is like baby powder or talcum powder. So if you ever used baby powder, it gets freaking everywhere, and you can't get it off. But see, unlike baby powder or talcum powder, because the lunar regolith is for the most part made up of stuff that hit it, right? And you know, whatever the moon's made, a couple that with whatever the moon's made out of, right? It's basically like inhaling fiberglass. The lunar dirt is just small pieces of rocks. It's like sand almost, but it's a lot finer, and it is a lot of it is glass. So think about inhaling glass. That's probably not good for you. Or if you worked on your house before, touching fiberglass and then like wiping your face, not good. It's an irritant to humans. That's not great. That isn't an insurmountable problem, to be very, very fair. But that's still a big thing you got to understand. The other thing to take into account when you're going to explore the moon is regolith propagation during landing, during terminal descent. So when, I'm not talking over him.
Let's go.
Avionics.
Avionics.
Basically, when something lands, how it shoots
GNC.
the
lunar dust out.
GNC is go.
VCon.
VCon is go.
T1.
T1 is go.
GC.
GC is go.
PLS.
PLS is go.
RSO.
RSO is go.
MET.
MET is go.
Land
MM.
center or mission control? I'll let you
MM is
decide.
go.
FAN.
FAN is go.
LSO.
LSO is go.
And LD sub.
LD sub is go.
Okay, the go no go sequence is complete. We are T-minus 11 minutes, 11 seconds, and counting. We're go for terminal count auto sequence at T-minus 10 minutes. From this time, the 3-word procedure is in effect.
Good, yeah, that's a good point, still, silly.
That's exactly what we wanted to hear out of MCC. We are go to proceed towards Electron's launch at 5:43 a.m. local time here in New Zealand, or 2:43 a.m. in Japan for this inspective team.
So, interesting thing, this Electron, the Electron rocket configuration that's designed to launch this inspective satellites has 4 blisters on the fairing. They're kind of 45 degrees across from each other, or 180 degrees across from each other, 90 degree separation, right? So they're 4 corners of the fairing. Those blisters are to give more room for this inspective satellite. This inspective satellite, with Rocket Lab's original fairing, would have hit the outside fairing walls during separation. So they put blisters on the side, like little reliefs on the side of the fairing, so the satellite can fit. This video claimed Space News the other day, so can't listen to that either. This was Rocket Lab's Victus mission. So what Victus is a program that's done by the Space Force, where it's designed to test rapid launch capability. So if you're part of the Victus program, right, basically, you sign a contract with the Air Force saying that they can call, or the Space Force say they call you at any time and say launch within 24 hours. We need a payload that we're going to send to you, right? Get the payload, put it together, put the rocket together, and launch it within 24 hours. It's a rapid response program. Peter Beck got the call. That's why he picked up his phone at the beginning of the video. And they threw an Electron rocket together, first, second stage payload with the whatever the Space Force told them to launch, integrated into the vehicle, got it up and ready, and launched it in 16 hours, which is pretty impressive. That's pretty cool. You probably know this, but is there a way to add audio to a different line that gets used in the streams, but not the Twitch VODs? I don't know. Yes, there is, Pelly. Do I want to do it? Probably not. Yeah, see, 16 hour, 42 minutes. Pretty good, man. The juice ain't worth the squeeze, Pelly, because considering that any particular video that we watch is during like an 8-hour stream is maybe 5 minutes at best. I can talk over these. I know what most of these videos are about, and I think I can successfully explain it. Like, even if we have closed captions, then we don't need to worry about nothing. But in this one particular case, I can tell you what's going on. Hey, what do we got here?
Mission assurance cameras. Since then, Pioneer has completed its first rendezvous maneuvers for the mission, which involved getting up close and taking images of a second spacecraft. A bit like a high-stakes game of orbital cat and mouse.
No, I got you.
Those 24/7 ops continue to Pioneer and our operations team, so make sure to check out our website and social pages for more cool photos and videos about Victor's Haze. All right, with terminal checks complete and launch pad ready underway, we are at T-minus 7 minutes and counting. Shortly, we'll see the top clamp open and strong back retract in preparation for flight.
Now, the vehicle taking Synspective to orbit today is the Electron rocket, standing 18 meters tall on the pad. Electron is a 2-stage rocket with a kick stage made dedicated to launches for small satellites across commercial, civil, and national security missions. Coming in at 13,000 kilograms once fully fueled, Electron sits in the small lift class of orbital rockets and has been the world's most frequently launched rocket of its type for many years now. Today's mission is launch number 91 for Electron, and we're expecting to hit launch number 100 in the next few months.
Impressive.
From the top of the rocket, we have Electron's protective fairing over the top of the Strix satellite for today.
So I already talked about the fairing, but guys, I'll be honest with you. If SpaceX, like, these numbers are nothing compared to Falcon 9, right? They're nothing. Like, Falcon 9 has launched almost 650 times at this point. Electron's launched 91, right? But I will say this, 91 launches, I believe Electron's first launch was in 2018. 91 launches over 8 years is really good. That's really good. If SpaceX didn't exist, that would be insane. Even Rocket Lab, you know, that is nowhere near, like, they're like miles ahead of any other rocket launching that amount of time. Like, the only thing I can think that launched that much is like maybe Delta II, but I don't think Delta II launched 91 times over the course of 8 years. I mean, this year, this is their 12th mission. Rocket Lab has launched basically 2 times a month. So that's an Electron every 2 weeks. That's really good. That is really good. That's it. Even if it's just a small sat launcher, that is a really, really, really impressive feat. And the reason why I bring it up is because it gets, you know, overshadowed by Falcon 9, which launches every 2 days, right? Well, it's actually down now. It's like every 3 to 4 days, but this is still a very impressive feat for any rocket. That's really good. Just something to take into account. You know, they're going to tell you the numbers, and they're going to say, like, you know, you hear them and you'd be like, oh, that's nothing compared to Falcon 9. But yeah, it's still miles ahead of literally everyone else.
Able to maneuver the kick stage for plane changes, altitude adjustments, or
Rocket Lab has launched more boosters into orbit than Blue Origin has launched things into space, period. Full stop. And Rocket Lab has been around 10 years less, almost. Rocket Lab was founded in 2016, I think. 10 years less than Blue. I mean, well, 15 almost. Blue's from 2000.
Got just a couple of minutes left before liftoff, and soon at the T-minus 2 minute mark, our operators hand over control to the rocket's flight computer to take us through to T0. This is called the autonomous auto-sequence start, and from this point onward, the rocket is essentially making its own go-no-go decisions based on hundreds of sensor readings across the vehicle. One of its first actions is to arm Electron's AFTS, or Autonomous Flight Termination System. This is the system with control over Electron's launch corridor, and it will be monitoring the rocket's trajectory and flight health for any intervention if needed, if things go wrong.
And at the same time, Electron's propellant tanks across Stage 1 and Stage 2 are brought up to their final flight pressure levels. That's a call-out you'll hear within the T-minus 1 minute mark. This pressurization is critical because it not only forces propellant into the Rutherford engines when we need it to, but it also provides strength to the tanks during flight, similar to air pressure inside of a balloon. After that, it's on to another 2 call-outs from the launch director, one at T-minus 20 seconds and another at T-minus 10 seconds to mark the final countdown to liftoff. These are the last manual checkpoints before Electron commits to flight right at T0. Their auto-sequence start is moments away, so we're going to hand it over to Mission Control now and listen in to the final countdown. Go Electron, go Synspective, and go Strix.
See the green laser at the bottom of the pad. Yeah, I see it. If they talked about it, it was either during one of the videos or I missed it. But
the vehicle is fully on internal power. AFTS is green and enabled for flight.
Automatic flight termination
ECS
system.
is disabled.
Environmental control systems off. Okay, so the 2 minutes the auto sequencer was started, that's where Electron's onboard computers are controlling the vehicle.
LOX load is complete. System is in recirculation.
Okay, LOX load complete. See the vent line? They're in recirc mode, which is just making sure the propellants get topped off because they have a shelf life. You want to make sure it has a full tank of gas, so to speak, when you go to launch.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
$60 seconds.
Anti-geysering is disabled.
That's the LOX anti-geysering system. When you're evacuating liquid oxygen propellants from the filling process,
tanks are pressed for flight.
The LOX is boiling, so it's very easy
engine purge enabled.
to get bubbles in the lines, and it can geyser. You can make a geyser. They disabled the anti-geysering systems when they moved into top-off mode. T-minus 35 seconds. $25. New camera angle. 20.
T-minus 20 seconds and counting. 10, 9, 8,
Starbase Live is on
7,
because they're moving ship forward.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay. We got a liftoff, 10 hour of 10. The 4th flight or the 10th flight first inspected, 4th in a 10 mission block by from Synspective to launch their SAR satellites into orbit.
Stage 1 propulsion nominal.
That's a lot of clouds. 35
Tens
seconds.
across the board with Electron's launch off the pad for Synspective's 10 out of 10 mission from LC1. We're now 42 seconds into flight and approaching our first critical milestone, max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure. This is the point where Electron experiences peak aerodynamic loading on its way through Earth's atmosphere and on the way to space. Let's listen in now for confirmation from Mission Control that we've cleared max Q.
Electron is supersonic, approaching max Q.
So those flashes are ice coming off the vehicle. The ice coming off the vehicle is interacting with the plume from the engines because it's falling off, and then it's going into the fire down there, and it creates a...
HVB
It'll
discharge
sublimate and
holding
create a
nominal.
flash. It seems like...
Cleared max Q.
Okay, maximum dynamic pressure. It seems like...
And there's
it's
the
just
core.
camera
Max Q
quality
is
that's doing-
behind
that's
us
making it
as
look
Electron
worse than
continues
it
its
is.
way onward to low Earth orbit for Synspective. Electron is now more than 20 kilometers above Earth and traveling at more than 2,500 kilometers an hour, thanks to the thrust coming out of those 9 Rutherford engines at the bottom of the first stage. Coming up shortly will be a rapid sequence of events for Electron. Main engine cutoff, followed by first and second stage separation, and then second stage Rutherford ignition.
First up with main engine cutoff, or MECO, those engines will shut down simultaneously to slow the velocity of Electron just a touch. This very brief coast lowers the dynamic forces at play for stage separation when the second stage is separated from the first stage. That separation event creates a bit of distance over the couple of seconds before the Rutherford engine on stage 2 lights up to continue on with the mission. Let's watch and listen now.
Everything looks fine here. It was just ice coming off the vehicle from what it looks like. There are residual sparks, but that's just inherent to using
MECO confirmed.
kerosene and liquid oxygen. Stage separation.
Stage separation confirmed.
Stage 2 ignition confirmed.
Upper stage ignition pumps.
Beautiful execution there by Electron with a
that looked
nice
fine.
clean MECO stage
That was
sep
good.
and nominal second stage engine start. Very soon we're expecting fairing separation when Electron's nose cone splits and falls away to
back.
expose the strict satellite to space for the very first time. Let's watch this together. You should be able to see the jettison happen on your screen.
There's payload fairing.
Jettison confirmed.
Payload fairing separation. Some pop off there.
Fairing jettison confirmed, and you're looking at Synspective's strict satellite attached there
No,
to
Brent.
Electron's kick stage, ascending closer towards its operational orbit at 552 kilometers above Earth.
Believe it or not, each one of those fairing halves weighs less than 50 kilograms, thanks to its carbon composite construction.
120
Light enough
pounds.
for a single person to move around on their own, though they'd have a bit of difficulty at the speed Electron is moving right now. More than 8,300 kilometers an hour at climbing more than 141 kilometers above Earth. The second stage will continue on that way for just under 6 minutes longer until it's time to separate the kick stage and strict satellite into orbit.
Once again, these flashes here are just combustion byproducts, guys. It's just a lot of... with a rocket engine like the Rutherfords and the Rutherford vacuum, they run very fuel-rich on purpose. They're purposely putting more fuel into the engine. SpaceX does this as well. It's just... you don't really see it as much. Because there's a lot of extra fuel in this design, you do get some residual combustion. Those sparks are normal. It happens. It's just because they're running fuel rich. Now, why do they run fuel rich? Why do they deliver more fuel than oxidizer needed? It keeps the engine cool. So this is using RP1, which is really, 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 really spicy kerosene. And fuel is a very good heat sink. Fuel is made out of carbon and hydrogen. It's hydrocarbons, right? So chains of carbons, carbon and hydrogen. Yeah, both of those elements are very good at conducting heat. So they put more fuel into the engine to keep it cool. And is it as efficient? No, it's not. You're not getting like, it's not 1-to-1, right, with kerosene to liquid oxygen, but you're not putting in the stoichiometric amount, which is like the ideal amount of of liquid fuel to oxidizer. They run more fuel, so it's not an efficient burn, but also your motor doesn't blow up. That's kind of useful. Probably want that. I'd trade the efficiency for that. So some of these sparks that you see are it's just extra fuel that gets dumped out the nozzle and residually combusts. It happens. When is Neutron expected to fly? I have no idea, dude. They had some problems with their qualification test, the interstage qualification test article. They cracked the interstage at 120% of rated structural load, which is not what they want. not what they wanted. Do you know of any rockets that have failed at or around max Q? No, Goose. Not. If they have, it's not because of max Q. Max Q is a fairly predictable thing to figure out. It's pretty dang predictable. I've seen rockets fail around max Q because thrust vector control systems in the first stage failed. There was a Delta II launch in 1986, launching a GOES satellite. And the RS-27 in the first stage, the TVC failed mid-flight, right around max Q. There's a high voltage battery jettison. Because the Rutherford engines use electronic fuel pumps, they have batteries on board to drive the fuel pumps. And when the batteries die, they jettison them. That's what you just saw right there. Yeah, Zelencho. So yeah, the crazy thing is that Delta launch, Goose, was like right after Challenger. So, you know, there's obviously the suck that happened after, you know, STS-51L launched. And then like, it was like maybe a week after that, they launched the Delta II and that failed too. Talk about a freaking low point, dude.
And strict satellite into position for payload deployment. The mission will be delivered first to a staging orbit where the kick stage will spend some time coasting around Earth before it can align itself on a circular path that meets Inspective's constellation requirements.
Yep, we have a single engine burn lined up for the kick stage to move out of that phasing orbit, which will take place around 40 minutes after its separation from the second stage. After that, we got a second Curie engine burn to line up the payload for release to its exact 552-kilometer target, all while moving at a nominal orbital velocity somewhere above 27,000 kilometers an hour.
17,500
But first up before that, of course, is the final separation event for this mission. Much like what we did with the first stage, we'll be shutting off the Rutherford engine with SECO, or second engine cutoff, before the kick stage is separated from stage 2 to set us off into a staging orbit for the mission. SECO should be coming up shortly now. Let's watch and listen.
Guidance is in terminal, 20 seconds remaining.
Second stage has gone into closed loop guidance, meaning the onboard inertial measuring units are being used to extrapolate where the stage is in 3D space. It knows where it is, so it knows where it isn't.
SECO confirmed.
Second stage engine cutoff, 26930 at 260.
Stage separation confirmed.
Curie stage separation. And their audio
beautifully done by the Rutherford engine with a nice clean shutdown on the second stage. And off goes the kick stage, now on its way to prepare for our 10th satellite deployment for Synspective's LEO constellation. We've got about 40 minutes or so in this coast phase of the mission before we come back to the kick stage.
During this coast, the kick stage's flight computer is continuously tracking position and velocity to refine its calculations for the optimal engine burn needed for its circularization and payload deployment. That's coming up at about T plus 53 minutes into flight and should last approximately 2.5 minutes. And then within an hour of liftoff, we'll be deploying the latest strict satellite to orbit. Join us back here soon to see out the final moments of the mission.
So it's going to be a little bit before they get to staging. They got to go around to the other side of the world. But how's the stock doing? I don't have any shares in Rocket Lab. Yeah. But man, some people made some cash. What the heck happened there? Oh, yeah, I know what happened there. Never mind. That was the SpaceX dump. Yeah, your dad to buy in at $4 a share. How many shares did he buy, RJ, if you don't mind me asking? Tim won't claim my bot. Yeah, I actually had a chit-chat with him a little while back, dudes. actually, it was probably about a month ago at this point. Yeah, I had a little chit chat with Tim. He actually gave me permission to show clips of all of his stuff, dude. He was like, it was funny because he's like, wait a minute, somebody told me that you said I didn't give you permission to show your stuff. I'm like, you didn't. Scroll up in this Discord chat. He's like, oh. Nah, you can show my stuff. That's cool. I'm like, all right. I was like, okay, man. All good, dude. Hell yeah. And he was like, I told him, I'm like, dude, I respect what you said, and I tell people to go watch your videos all the time. Like, so yeah. Tim was like, you've been doing that since I didn't give you permission to watch the videos? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, dude, that was like 5 years ago. I'm like, yeah, so? And he's like, yeah, you could show clips. Don't do a reaction. Don't watch the whole thing, but you can do clips. That's totally cool. I'm like, all right. Sweet, man. I appreciate it. I'm still going to tell people to go watch your videos, dude. Like, sorry. And he's like, thanks. So yeah, no, we can look at bits and pieces of his vids now, which is pretty cool. We have permission, which is pretty sweet. EJ, how are we able to hear the rocket from space? If I remember correctly, there shouldn't be any sound. That's a good question, Mike. So what Rocket Lab is doing is they, for the most part, have a microphone up against the side of the rocket. You're not so much hearing the sound, but the vibrations of the rocket engine, of the pump turning on, through the vehicle. That's what the microphone is. It's basically a microphone that's like set up against the side of the rocket. Good on you for respecting his request for 5 years. I mean, Entropy, I don't screw around with that stuff, dude, especially with other spaceflight creators. Like, if it's just, somebody shares a TikTok here and there, or like a short or whatever, that's fine. But generally with like long format content, I'm very careful about that. I'm very careful for 2 reasons. First and foremost, you can get DMCA'd on Twitch live. They could just shut your stream off if somebody says something and they don't like it. Twitch is, somebody goes to Twitch and says, this is my work, this idiot's showing it on their stream, they can just hit the off button and ban you. Well, while you're streaming. It's not just about VODs being muted. Second thing is, like, look, I know people aren't going to like this, and Digital Millennium Copyright Act is stupid. It's a terrible, antiquated way of enforcing intellectual property on the internet. But also at the same time, I do believe in intellectual property. You should get paid for what you made. Simple as that. Unless explicitly said otherwise, right? Tim does a good job. He should get paid for his work, so go watch his videos. That's correct, Lava, yes. I have permission from NASA. I have permission from SpaceX. I have permission from ULA. I have permission from Blue. Actually, yeah, like, I haven't asked Rocket Lab. I just don't really know anybody that works there, believe it or not. But I know it's cool. I know it's they've said in the past that it's fine. But even then, that's not like explicit, but they're okay with it. I mean, spoiled, I probably could at this point. Like, it's all Lars's fault. It is all Lars's fault. So we're about 15 minutes into the mission. Since 10 Owl of 10 is over Antarctica right now. And they're going to wait until the thing goes around to the other side of the world and they get a good signal on it, and then they'll deploy the payload. So payload deployment time isn't for another 45 minutes, dudes. So we can chill and talk space while the mission's going on. Should get permission from Gilmore. I didn't get permission from Gilmore because, yeah, I couldn't really find a place to reach out that I thought was appropriate, but, showed it anyway and nothing happened. But that doesn't mean it's okay, like, dude, I'm not gonna lie to you. Navigating IP on the internet is difficult. It's really tough. It's a hard thing to do if you want to do it right. Peter Beck made a comment the last time he was on NSF that they need to show more Rocket Lab content. Yeah, there you go. Like, that's how I know Rocket Lab is fine. Like, but yeah, for the most part, dude, if I'll shoot off a message, right? Sometimes people don't reply. Like, sometimes they do. I see Mac on X, but it's your call. I didn't check X. I don't know if they have their DMs open, but I'll look. But then again, John's, the Gilmore space launch wasn't live streamed. We ended up having to watch somebody that just went down there and turned on their cell phone and started live streaming from their phone. So technically, it would have been the right move not to ask Gilmore, but that's why I didn't find anything from them. God, I'm stupid sometimes. I'm sorry. Like, I'm such an idiot sometimes. Sorry. Why no Astra content? Because they have to launch something for me to cover their launches. Yeah, Dan. Tim said as long as you don't just like watch the whole video, like watch an hour-and-a-half video, like one of his deep dives, and just react to the entire damn thing, like, yeah, you're good. Show 5-minute segments, show 10-minute segments, look at different bits and pieces. Totally cool. He's like, I'm totally cool with that. I know you. I'm like, thanks, bro. He's gone permission from Astro. You have to submit AI training data. No, I don't think I will. Is NSF still partnered with Astro for the live streams? I don't know. I mean, in order for me to know, Astra has to launch something. Nick and Knight had a 45-monther in there. Squish Chin, what's up, dude? You had a 96-monther in there. Thanks, guys. Sorry, I saw those flashes at the beginning of the launch, and it was just a lot of ice coming off in the camera angle. But yeah, I was like, what is that? Chris also had a 70-monther in there. Chris Allen, thanks. Thanks, dudes. I appreciate it. We tried to encourage a plane spotting crew from Brisbane to head up to Gilmore, but nothing yet. Don't forget, Astra is an AI company now. You guys ever seen Silicon Valley? You remember the character Russ Hanneman? The guy that just had a good idea a little while back and has not been riding it, but you could really tell that being in the Bay Area for too long has just fried this dude's brain completely. Radio on internet. To rebillionize it. Oh, I just brought it up as a matter of factly. There's no relation to the current topic. Tres comas. You know what it means? It means 3 commas. It's the amount of money that I'm gonna get when I sell your company and make that frick ton of Intersight money to rebillionizing. To rebillionizing. The Aviato guy? No, that's not Russ. That's a different dude, but also same idea. Looks like they launched a building with all the windows. Yeah, Charles, I'm pretty sure that's just a placeholder animation. They really don't want people to see what the satellite looks like. SAR is either closely guarded government secrets or very, very, very much closely guarded proprietary information. That looks like a cheese grater. Or you could just, for fun, imagine they launched a big cheese grater into space. Your call. You could save money by being a rocket company but not launching rockets. Lava, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, you know, my space programs that we run in KSP aren't susceptible to this exact same problem. But I've noticed that a lot of rocket launch companies lately are diversifying to doing everything but launching rockets. I don't know, just a pattern I've noticed. Everybody has their reasons, but, you know, it turns out if you operate a launch company, if you're a launch provider, you have to launch rockets. I know, weird concept. This guy launches. This is the guy here that's doing all the launching. Right, or am I right? Hey, Michael, what's going on? I'm just fine. Yeah, I see it with Firefly, Vantorino, but the thing is that Firefly pivoted to making landers, and then they actually landed something on the moon, so I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt there in that regard. They are also building the Antares 330 first stage on top of Firefly Alpha, so they have diversified, but they've diversified into making more launch vehicles and then making landers with rocket engines on them that actually land on the moon, which apparently is a difficult thing to do if you compare them to the other providers and other people that have attempted to land on the moon on the commercial level. So Firefly, yes, they've pivoted, but what they've pivoted to is actually something that involves launching and going into space and landing, you know, on the moon. So they get a pass. Love Silicon Valley. Is very close to real life. Yeah, dude. Yeah, that's one of my probably one of my all-time favorite shows, dude. But Vanta, that doesn't mean that you're wrong. Firefly does need to launch more. It seems like they have some trouble scaling alpha production, which I'm kind of like, especially, I mean, Firefly launched 7 alpha rockets. They made 8 of them. One of them blew up, right, on the test stand. And, you know, they completed their 7th alpha launch a couple of months ago, right? But now they're pivoting to Block 2, Alpha Block 2. I would argue, like, Block 2 is probably just an internal name, but, you know, this is a rocket that's primary stakeholder expectation was to compete in the medium-duty, high-frequency launch vehicle market. So something like Antares that launches all the time, right? So we're, you know, actually Alpha is really kind of at the upper echelon of what like a small sat launch vehicle is. It kind of straddles the border between small and medium-duty launch vehicle. And it was supposed to launch a lot, et cetera, and it hasn't done that. And now they're pivoting. They're pivoting to the Block 2 design, and I'm wondering, like, how long is it going to take for that to happen? Right now, there's nothing wrong with refactoring a rocket design to allow it to fly more, right? Like Falcon 9 Block 5, good example. But in order for Falcon 9 Block 5 to really exist, right? They needed to launch probably 50 to 60 times of just older, you know, older variants of Falcon, you know, well, they weren't old at the time, right? They'd launched 1.0, and then they launched 1.1, and then they launched 1.2, which utilized the densified liquid oxygen. And then, you know, it was 1.2 Block 1, 1.2 Block 2, 3, 4, and then Falcon 9 1.2 full thrust Block 5, which, I mean, SpaceX basically said screw that and refactored the name and just called it Falcon 9 Block 5, right? The point is that they had to do a lot of flights to understand what it takes to make a vehicle that can be that performs better and can be turned around easier. It took a lot of flight data. I'm not sure if Firefly can. You got to launch a lot before you refactor a rocket's design to be optimized for high flight rate. And as if I'm understanding what they want to do with Alpha correctly, that seems to be what they want to do. They want to make a small to medium duty launch vehicle, right? That that's, you know, serves that market for low cost with high scale. So fun fact, flying less is not the wisest strategy for trying to, you know, do that. SpaceX made launching medium-class rockets non-profitable for everyone else. Yeah, from the transporter missions. Link for Space News, the Deneb engine. Oh yeah, Impulse tested their Deneb engine. Yeah, I mean, hey, man's on Mars. $5 super chat. Go Rocket Lab. Appreciate the coverage and insights. You're welcome. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate the support. So we're in a coast phase here for the 10 Owl 10 mission here. They're flying over the South Pole right now, and deployment is at 53 past. So we got about I don't know, 25 minutes here. A little bit more than that, but yeah, we're here for the duration, dudes. Talk about space news. Blaz, if you wanted to start a launch provider company in 2031 and we'll start off with an Electron-like rocket, will there be any point because Starship would launch so much for cheaper? Yes, there would be reasons to do that. Look, as much as I hate saying that there's other reasons, this is the other reason. I won't sugarcoat it. I'll be very candid about this. The other reasons are defense contracts. The Department of Defense isn't going to need Starship for everything. And the Department of Defense doesn't like using one launch vehicle to do everything. They will always want redundancy and healthy kind of catalog of different styles of rockets to do different missions. Even if Starship does everything that SpaceX wants it to do and gets to that $2 million a launch price point, there will still be other vehicles that exist. Like Vulcan. Vulcan will exist in that environment. Ariane 6 will exist in that environment. The reason why, I mean, Ariane 6 is more, you know, defense for Europe, right? But no country, you know, like let's talk countries that aren't the US. No country is going to give up launch capability just so they can launch on Starship more. I'd be very surprised if somebody gave up sovereign launch capability. So with that being said, there's always going to be defense contracts for in the US for a healthy, diverse catalog of launch vehicles. Same with Europe, same with Japan. Russia ain't giving up their launch capability, that's for sure, but you're definitely not getting launch contracts with them, I don't think. But you get the idea. The UK gave it up. Yes. I knew someone was going to say that, Spoiled, but I was very surprised that somebody wouldn't understand the context of said conversation in this day and age, not, you know, relinquishing launch capability from a you know, political and economic environment from a half century ago. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that was then, this is now. Question: is Stargazer staging to the Marshall Islands to launch Pegasus? It's at Kwajalein now, Fluffy. It flew out to Kwaj the other night. So, I mean, the U.S., long story short, the U.S. government is always going to want a healthy catalog of different types of rockets, so there's always going to be somewhat of a market there. It might be missile tech, it might be hypersonic testing. Like, look at Electron. Electron with the HASTE missions has done a fair amount of hypersonic testing for the government, right? Could Falcon 9 do that? Sure. But, like I said, the Air Force, the Space Force, and NASA to an extent, I mean, I would argue that the Space Force is a bigger space program than NASA, which is dumb. But that's just how it goes. They're always going to want to spread it around. They never want to put all their eggs in one basket. They never want a sole source orbital launch capability. That's a dumb idea. And when I say that, you know, Actually, no, that's not a good example. But yeah, they're never going to sole source it. So yes, there absolutely is. What's this greasy pole competition in Gloucester? I have no idea, dude. That's the North Shore. I don't go up there. Reality is that outside of launching your own mega clusters, there isn't enough of a market to be profitable. Yeah, one man, that's a very good point. It's almost like we made a National Space Administration that's designed to fix that problem, and they're not doing that. That's weird. Very strange. I've always wondered, the faces of launches, are they faces of launches? Are they typically somebody like yourself with a ton of knowledge, but maybe not certified, more of a marketing person? The people that are hosting this cast are engineers, Butcher. They're just engineers and techs that work for the company. I mean, they're all reading from a teleprompter, dude. I don't do any of that crap. I come up with my own copy, improvise on the spot. In fact, I make it a thing to make eye contact and deadpan into the camera when I'm explaining things to you guys, to show you kind of subconsciously, I'm not reading from a cue card. Any information that I tell you, unless you see me look over here and say it, is something that's coming out of here. It was my way of telling you that I know what I'm talking about without me saying I know what I'm talking about. Would it be smart for a company to launch AI satellites like SpaceX wants, but for government AI like how Kuiper is government internet? Like I said, Blas, defense contracts here and there, all over the place. Look, if you can build, even if you just built a copy of Electron, you say you start your company, Blas, and you call it Locket Rab. Right? And you make the, Electron rocket, you make an exact copy, but you spell Electron backwards or something, right? Right? And you be like, look, we got this. Once again, Sir Peter Beck would probably be like, hey, yeah, about that. But also say like he was cool with it, right? It's not like you wouldn't be able to get government contracts with that type of capability. Orbital capability is orbital capability. It doesn't matter the rocket. Guys, Astra got contracts from DARPA. Astra. Capability is capability, dude. Pocket crab. Yeah, there you go. Exactly. I wasn't calling you a teleprompter type. Yeah, I know, Angry. I just thought I'd talk about it because it's more me anticipating where the conversation is going, because if I said like, oh, these guys are just reading off teleprompters, and I'd like to think that I understand my viewers. The next question is, well, do you do that? No, I do not. Unless you see me looking away from the camera. I like to just talk. That's the other thing. I like to just talk to you guys. It doesn't need to be this formal presentation. The vehicle is coasting. I can do that. I can do that. I did that during the Artemis missions at, when we were doing the Walter Cronkite accent. Like, I can be formal if I have to, but not on this stream. Is spin launch a thing these days? No. Man's on Mars, which is exactly why I enjoy following you and your opinions. Yeah, dude, guys, even to this day, like, with all the nonsense that's going on in real life with me, I still read about space every day off stream. Every day, no exceptions. It's just a part of my day. Sometimes that entails just going on social media and, reading what Blue's posting about, or what Rocket Lab's posting about, or what SpaceX is posting about, or even reading what people are saying about what's going on in the industry. I'm always reading about space. Sometimes it's going and raiding NTRS. And, you know, I'll see somebody say something about, oh, well, this rocket engine doesn't do this. And I'll be like, I don't know, maybe it does. And then I'll go raid the technical report server and read one. Like, I still do that to this day. I've been doing that for 15 years. Like, I was doing that before I started streaming. And I've only been streaming for 14 at this point. Well, 13 and a half if you really want to be technical. I mean, guys, like, if I was going to build a rocket company, Bloods, like, while we're on the, you know, it might seem like, okay, if you built a copy of Electron or something that's synonymous in function with Electron or Alpha or whatever, right? You would, you know, like, you'd probably get contracts here and there, but are you going to make bajillions of dollars? Probably not. Like, you could pivot to in-house proliferated sat bus manufacturing. I honestly think that if you really, this is very much my opinion, and no, this is not financial advice nor anything like that. I think any rocket launch provider, save for SpaceX, that's trying to pivot into building mega constellations is going to really have a tough time. They're gonna have a tough time. Like, do not pivoting into sat bus manufacturing and mass production is anticipating that the proliferated low Earth orbit constellation market is not going to get saturated in the next 5 years. Meaning that SpaceX has 10,000 satellites up there. And then they're going to have another shell that's in a higher orbit with the data center satellites, et cetera, and then they're going to basically make a lunar relay network for communications out on the moon for lunar colonization, or to exploit on-orbit lunar manufacturing, et cetera, and, you know, like, you could sit here and you can look at SpaceX's stock and be like, the stock's going down, They IPO'd at 135. During the day of the IPO, they made $80 million. In a SpaceX financial report the other day, which is something that I read, you know, during my, you know, kind of daily read about space time during the day, SpaceX showed they disclosed their cash on hand. They have $100 billion in liquidity right now, in cash. Well, that's not even liquidity. Liquidity would be assets that you could sell. They have $100 billion on hand in cash. They made $80 billion from the IPO. And if the stock stays at 150 above the 135 IPO, they're just, yeah, you're good. Like, so first of all, if you think you're beating that beast, you're not. Second of all, right, Blue is right behind them with Project Kuiper, right? Between those two and the defense contracts and the, you know, between like data center satellites, Starshield, you know, Golden Dome contracts, et cetera, that market's going to get saturated in the next 5 years. If you're pivoting to sat bus manufacturing right now, you're not going to get anywhere. Why'd you launch a 4-story building into orbit? It's not a 4-story building, it's a cheese grater. They can outspend and outlast you as well, same as Amazon. So the point is to not discourage people from wanting to start companies in the aerospace industry. The point that I'm trying to make is that find an underserved capability and do that. If you're trying to pivot into proliferated, so small sat mass production, like Starlink or Amazon Leo or whatever Blue Origin's proliferated network is called. It's not Amazon Leo, it's something different. That means now they're competition. You're not competing with that unless you have an insane capital infusion to the tune of $100 billion. Older Buffalo,
Discovery,
38 month
throttle up.
resub. Thanks as always for the streams. I often have your streams up during the day to keep me company as you work. Hey, it's a pleasure being people's background noise, Buffalo. I'm totally cool with that. I appreciate it. You know, people aren't paying attention 24/7, but that's okay. Being someone's background noise is very flattering, and you know, and it's something that at face value you shouldn't like. It seems like you shouldn't be like, well, you're not paying attention, right? No, being someone's background noise is freaking very flattering. I'm the go. That means I'm your go-to, and that's very meaningful to me. That's very endearing.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
SpaceX is adding direct to cell. Probably will change the mobile market, and I'm here for it. Yeah, they definitely want to roll out to being a cell phone service provider, right? To compete with terrestrial cell towers, right? They're going to compete with T-Mobile. They're going to compete with Verizon. They're going to compete with AT&T, and they'll probably, I mean, honestly, they'll do better. You can't beat coverage literally anywhere in the world. So, I mean, the telecom companies will probably piss and whine and lobby to, you know, somehow stay relevant. But yeah, you're not competing with that, right? So, Angry Butcher, Master Lurker here, but I do chat from time to time. Yeah, man. I think if you're getting into PLEO stuff or you're trying to diversify into PLEO, like Rocket Lab has tried to do that, but who's bought them? They made Flatellite, which is a flat-packed satellite that's somewhat analogous in function to Starship. They rolled out that program a couple years ago. No one's bought it. Well, there's an asterisk to that statement. I just want to tell you the whole story to be very clear. That the Flatellite is designed to launch on Neutron. So it's possible that they'll launch it more in the future, but nothing right now. It can't launch on Electron, so there's probably a reason why we haven't heard anything about it. I heard rumors that SpaceX is looking to buy T-Mobile. I believe that. Hey, Chief. Happy Friday. How's Bree and Titan? Everybody's good. We're good here. I know you say that Project Kuiper is right behind SpaceX, but how far behind are they before they can go live? Only a handful of launches compared to Starlink. They're nowhere near 10,000 satellites. The 10,000 strong satellite constellation that Starlink is, Drummer. They're nowhere near it. But they are light years ahead of everybody else. I'm not looking at the comparison between the amount of satellites between Blue and SpaceX, because if you look at it that way, SpaceX is eating Blue's lunch, and why does Project Kuiper exist? That's looking at it from a micro perspective. If you look at the entire SatBus industry, which if we're talking about the SatBus industry, it might be better to take a macro perspective of the entire SatBus industry, don't you think? If you look at the entire satellite industry as a whole, for like demand for satellites versus the type of satellite, etc., Blue is way ahead of everybody else. I mean, SpaceX is way ahead of them, if you want to say that, but that's not. Remember, the whole point of this conversation is to discuss, like, if you started an aerospace company, what would you pivot into? I say anybody that's trying to start an aerospace company that's designed to offer low-cost proliferated satellite production is going to fail miserably, comparatively to these two behemoths. This goes back to what you said. Rocket Lab launches, SpaceX launches, Blue, well, sort of. So where my mind just went, Fluffy, is that Blue was planning on scaling up New Glenn flight cadence. And the more and more I think about this, dudes, the more I think that
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Blue's original plans to scale up New Glenn flight cadence involved them switching to vertical integration anyway. They were already going to do that. That's my guess. That would explain why Dave Limp came out and said, oh yeah, we're going to fly in 6 months, because the designs for a vertically integrated New Glenn for flight cadence scaling is going to happen. We've already seen them kind of dangle bits and pieces of let's call it spaceflight analyst catnip, right? When they showed off 9x4, they showed it without a transporter erector. That was a big hint. That pretty much proved to me that 9x4 is going to be vertically integrated. And if you're going to try to switch to an architecture where one of your rockets is vertically integrated and one of your rockets is horizontally integrated, that's in the same family of rockets, that makes no sense. So that tells me that vertical integration with Blue has been on the radar for a long time. And they were going to eventually pivot to it, but this kind of gave them an in to do it. Now, the thing there is, what people are going to say is like, well, okay, if they were going to do that, right, there should have been no delay, etc., right? Well, I'm pretty sure they had to figure out, I'm pretty sure their original plans didn't call for, you know, switching Complex 36A to vertical integration when the pad was cratered. All right, the vertical integration concept of operations makes way more sense when there's not a big hole in the pad where one of your rockets blew up. So the delay there is basically from figuring out what you need to fix and not fix on the pad. So their 6-month thing does make sense, but I mean, I'll be honest with you, that's the only way that they're going to fly within 6 months. Because what I've been saying in the past is like, it's going to take them a long period of time to refly, right? But that is going entirely off the assumption that they had no plans to do vertical integration with New Glenn at this point and just came up with some. Right? If you think about it like this, if Blue did have some type of idea about what they want to do with switching New Glenn to a vertically integrated rocket because they eventually want to scale the 9x4, this makes a lot more sense. And I'm willing to bet that that's probably what's going on. Once again, the big asterisk in this is, you know, the big asterisk in this whole thing is like, obviously we don't know for sure, right? There have been hints. But also at the same time, I think that they weren't in their original ideas for switching New Glenn from horizontal to vertical integration. I don't think they were going to take into account a rocket blowing up on the pad. That's it. I already said that, but yeah, that's the idea. My question is, why not simply vertically integrate from the get-go? The cadence, we saw that turned out. Well, it's very clear that the scope of what Blue is trying to do, like 2017 to now Lava Eagle, is completely different. What Bob Smith was trying to do with Blue Origin is not what Dave Limp is trying to do with Blue Origin. And I firmly believe after Jeff stepped down as Amazon CEO, he had a much more hands-on approach to the company, and he still does to this day. And Jeff basically went in there and said, no, this is stupid. I'm getting Dave Limp, and I'm putting Dave in here because I know him from Amazon. He's my boy. He understands what I'm trying to achieve here. And the Blue Origin that emerged from like 2019 to now is much more representative of what Jeff's original intentions were for Blue were, if that makes any sense. We also get to say Dave Limp. Yep. And possibly we're waiting for the long lead GSE to be manufactured, but now rushing to an early start. They probably had the stuff already placed, and you know, they were going to reuse the towers in their vertical integration con-op, but one of them got blown away, so, and the other one's heavily damaged, so now you need to adjust your plans. I think that's why they think they can, I mean, that's not that big of a deal, but I think that's why they think they can fly in 6 months, because they already had ideas about how to do this. That's the only way that makes sense. If they're shooting from the hip and just decided after the explosion that they should switch to vertical integration and came up with a concept of operations in a couple of days for not only scaling New Glenn, but vertically integrating it. Well, so vertically integrating it and then scaling up flight cadence, that would fail. It doesn't matter who you are. If Elon tried to do that, it'd fail miserably. So yeah, the only way that them flying in 6 months makes sense in any way, shape, or form is that they already had plans to do this. This is just a convenient out for them. My guess if I had to throw my hat into the ring here, for what their potential concept of operations looked like, you know, pre-NG4 explosion, it was most likely to build out LC-36B with either a mobile launcher or an interchangeable pad plate, so you could launch 9x4 or 7x2 vertically integrated to it. That's my guess. And in the meantime, you would use the old horizontally integrated pad to get not scaled flight cadence, but a lot of good data on launching New Glenn a lot. I'm pretty sure that's what's going on. That's the only way that makes sense. EJ, have you watched Star City? No. For All Mankind and by proxy, Star City lost me in season 2. I don't care. I think the writing got extremely lazy and they focused on the drama and not the alt history and science and spaceflight side of the show. It just became a soap opera in space, and I'm just, not for me, dude. It's cool. If you like it, that's cool. I don't have a problem with it. It's just, I don't want to see. I don't want to see the struggles the personal struggles that people are going through that happen to be a part of a space program. I want to see adversity overcome because people are part of the space program as a whole. That's what makes the space program cool. For All Mankind, a show that was supposed to be about that, failed at that miserably in season 2 and pretty much every season subsequently. Am I wrong? Have you seen Hidden Figures? No. Six months is some strong copium, more motivational than anything. My one worry, Love Eagle, like I've said pretty much every space news this week when this comes up, is that Blue is trying to show people that they can bounce back from a problem really easily. And honestly, that is not what you should be doing right now. I really hope that Dave Limp is smarter than that. I'm pretty sure he is, but I don't know for sure. If you're trying to get New Glenn flying quickly in 6 months,
Carrier ignition confirmed.
Okay. They lit the engine, but they didn't say anything about it on the cast. So this is the circularization orbit that the upper stage is doing. They should be coming up on payload deploy here soon. Yeah, if they made that, we're gonna fly in 6 months thing to try and prove to people that they're a resilient company and can take a failure, that's really not the point you should be proving. But sometimes I get this is just straight vibes, and maybe my finger isn't on the pulse correctly here. I do have a lot of viewers that help me with interpretation. I'm not gonna lie, that work at Blue Origin. But the vibe that I've always gotten from Blue is that they're very
welcome back to our live stream.
They're very cognizant of how they look. It speaks when they do their casts, when they do their launch casts and stuff. They're very cognizant about how they come across. I don't know. It just, I don't know. You compare it to Rocket Lab. Rocket Lab just seems like there's just two people talking to you here.
We deploy the 10 Strix satellite for Synspective's constellation to low Earth orbit and carry out its Earth imaging operations using synthetic aperture radar.
This is our 10th mission for this customer in a series of constellation deployment launches lined up through to the end of the decade. And it's an exciting moment to see off another Strix bird to its new home in space. To get off the elliptical path it was set on, the kick stage's Curie engine fired up just a few moments ago to set the kick stage on a mostly circular trajectory at 552 kilometers.
Yep, with
a slightly lower perigee at 548 kilometers.
We had a nominal startup of that engine, and we're now just waiting for the Curie shutdown callout to come through from mission control.
You read the cue card too early, my dude.
Curie cutoff confirmed.
Okay, that's about a 2-minute burn there from the Curie stage.
Nicely done from the kick stage and Curie engine, with confirmation that the engine has shut down exactly when we needed it to line it up for payload deployment in just a few seconds. We got an animation of that sequence to watch while we listen in real time to mission control for updates, so let's bring that up now.
Yeah, Andrew, you know, I'm not against like an overproduced or well-produced.
Separation, Strixate confirmed.
There we go. Good separation, sorry. That's why I didn't mute it.
That is
Yeet.
10 out of 10 for the kick stage and Synspective, with the payload successfully delivered to orbit as promised. Congratulations to the team and all the best to Synspective's
That's what this looks like,
operators
Electro.
as they
It
turn
looks
now
like the
to
bridge of a
preparing
Star
strict
Destroyer.
for operations as soon as possible.
Couldn't put my finger on
It's
it,
been a
dude.
real hoot to deliver your constellation
Hoot.
to Leo over these past 10 launches, and we can't wait to see Electron back on the pad again soon for the next 17 Synspective missions lined up.
And congratulations to the Electron team for their 91st launch to space. Another notch in the belt that gets us closer and closer to our milestone 100th launch later this year. You know we're going to have to bring out some special decor for that one. In the meantime, follow along with Rocket Lab updates and mission announcements across our social channels in all the usual places. We look forward to you joining us again soon. This is Rocket Lab Mission Control, signing off.
You see what happened right there? That's why I don't like making copy, because, you know, when you're doing a cast and you're not like trying to be, like you're doing a cast in a professional environment. Like when I did the DBF streams, for instance, Design, Build, Fly, I didn't have anything like that. I had a couple of show notes that I wrote on, in my notebook and stuff, right, about what's doing what and what I shouldn't, like different teams, where they're from, et cetera, et cetera. But if you sit there and do a cast for a long period of time, you kind of start getting comfortable, right? And you get kind of comfortable in your element, right? And when you do that, I'm not going to say it's easier to wing it, but you kind of relax. And when you relax, it's like sometimes I'm not going to say you trip over your words, but your brain's like, okay, you don't, like, the copy is there, right? But I can handle it. And those two kind of butt heads with each other. And that's why at the end of the cast, right, they were like, what? You know what I mean? I'm not saying that they were bad commentators. They were fine. But yeah, you get comfortable. So I don't, like, if I'm in a professional environment and I have they want me to say certain things, I'll write it down, or I'll just keep in the back of my mind, okay, mention this, mention this, mention this. Never like an exact script or anything. That's not, I don't want copy that. Not Star Destroyer. Rocket Lab has railings. Oh yeah. Well, Space OSHA has different standards than, OSHA down here. We'll do it live. Yeah, there you go. Blue comes across as the same old heritage company. They just scale up existing tech to get into the market, but no actual goals other than scoring contract money. Yeah, Drew, I mean, if you want to be very critical, what Blue's mission is to try to make living in space a thing. At least that's what their mission is on paper. But what I do see them doing is pining for contracts. Like, they're trying to make solar panels for the moon. We saw them do that the other day. They're trying to work on ISRU and stuff. And all this stuff are means to completing the goals that Jeff wants to complete about, making life on orbit a thing, right? But also at the same time, what's the right way to say this? Like, it seems like they're just trying to pine for as much profitability as possible. And that's, and like, dude, there ain't nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't have a problem with that. What I'm kind of like about is, and they are not obligated in any way, shape, or form to tell us what they're doing. Honestly, any information that we get from them is a privilege to have, because they don't have to tell us anything. NASA does, which is why, one of the reasons why I want NASA to launch more of their own designed rockets, just putting it out there. They don't have to disclose anything, right? But I kind of wish that sometimes, like, as somebody that, talks about what Blue and SpaceX and everybody else does a lot, I would appreciate you do me a solid. Like, if you changed your mission statement, it would be really helpful if you told people that. But I don't know, they don't have to tell us anything. Just saying it would help, right? So while that Rocket Lab launch was going on, Ship 40 did move back to the production site, which is interesting. We kind of theorized on the NSF Ship 40 cast yesterday that we did that they would be doing a 6-engine static fire today. But just the way they did the fueling and the way they did the fueling and the way they didn't safe the vehicle exactly, like perfectly, not perfectly. They didn't, this single engine static fire was not, it was a different sequence of events than past single engine static fires. So that leads it. I mean, I think Ryan kind of hit the nail on the head yesterday. They were testing something else because they have time. Maybe they were testing on orbit relight. Maybe they were testing the ability boil off, mitigation or whatever. They were doing something. That wasn't a typical single engine static fire. They were trying something different. Hey, mans, $20. Good audience and community following you, EJ. Keep it up. You're a valid source of space intelligence and insight. My pleasure. Thank you for the $20 super chat, dude. I appreciate you. You don't own space. NASA does. Did you see the engine bay camera of the static fire? You could say that. Headphone users, just in case we switch to the video with volume. Headphone users, just in case. It probably is going to be fine, but just in case it isn't. It was fine. Hmm. 100% agree with you. It just seems like Blue doesn't have a primary goal. They just do things. Yeah, Lev, exactly. Yes. In the context of like launches, though, they do have a goal now. They're launching Project Kuiper. They are contracted for 12 New Glenn launches for Project Kuiper or Amazon Leo. And then on top of that, they made their own proliferated satellite constellation for defense applications for Blue Origin in-house. So here's the thing. A, do they have the money to do all this stuff and also do, New Glenn and satellite constellation? Yes, they do. They do. Absolutely. There's a big enough workforce that Blue's 15,000 strong at this point. That's gigantic for a launch provider, right? They're doing all different kinds of stuff. They're doing all different types of tech, et cetera, et cetera. They can do that and do what I'm about to tell you at the same time. With that all being said, now you're in the launch provider business. You know why? Because you got a contract to launch things for another company, albeit a company that's kind of under the same umbrella. Amazon bought Project Kuiper, or Amazon Leo launches from Blue Origin with New Glenn. There's 12 of them. So, look, all these other technology demonstrators things don't matter. They don't. You have a contract with another company, right? You have a contract with another company. The contract is for 12 launches. You've provided none of them. You tried to do one and it blew up, right? On top of that, you have their own in-house ideas for a proliferated low Earth orbit constellation, right? So now you're in the rocket launch game, whether you like it or not. That is by far and away that and the lander contract is by far and away the juiciest contracts you have. All right. Now, once again, it's not that Blue can't do both of these things. They absolutely can. They have the resources to. It's that while you're doing both of these things, it's a very weird look when you're doing all this other stuff beside doing the launch stuff. It very much seems like, and this is probably not what's going on at Blue, but like as an observer, it seems like you're working on all this other stuff, but getting the rocket to launch. But, you know, in the wake of the NG4 explosion, you can tell that they're taking it seriously now. They've been giving us constant updates on the pad and stuff, which I do appreciate. I love it. Good stuff. But somebody at Blue, and I'm pretty sure that this was the whole kind of impetus for making New Glenn 9x4. Somebody at Blue, a little while back, it probably was Dave Limp, to be honest, looked at all this stuff and said, look, our juiciest contracts are for launching stuff into space. That's where we're going to make the most money. It's not that we can't do these other things, but that's what we should be focusing on. And, you know, a little ways after when Dave was appointed the CEO, they rolled out 9x4, right? And once again, if I'm understanding it right, 9x4 was supposed to be vertically integrated from the start, which I told you was going to happen. And if that's the case, it doesn't make sense to have a rocket in the same family, right? One horizontally integrated and one vertically integrated. That's probably around the time where they decided to vertically integrate New Glenn 7x2 to prioritize higher flight cadence for these launch contracts that they are on the hook for now. That's just a guess, but that's what I would have done. So in that regard, Dave Limp might actually know what he's doing. And I'm willing to actually bet that he probably does. But who knows? You have a pet. You have a responsibility. If your rocket blows up, you don't just look at the pad and call it quits. You get your butt out there, you clean that pad, and you launch another rocket. Whoa. Chad, the part of the story I don't like is where Blue Origin gave up on launching things after the NG4 explosion. They didn't put posters up or anything. They just sat in mission control like a goon and waited. That's Billy Madison. Whatever. Sorry, I gotta take myself down a peg or two from time to time. Hey, Flavia, what have I missed this afternoon? When were you last here? Somebody knows something that they aren't sharing. Who, me, Blog? I don't know. Yeah, maybe. How does the difference between horizontal and vertical integration have an effect on launch cadence? PTZ, this is personal opinion. This isn't necessarily like gospel for the spaceflight industry, but horizontal versus vertical integration in the applications of flight cadence entirely depends on the size of the vehicle that you're dealing with. For somebody like Rocket Lab, horizontally integrating a tiny rocket like that makes a ton of sense. Even, I would probably say that about Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy is really kind of the upper echelons of where you should be doing horizontal integration if you really are looking to achieve a high flight rate. Long story short, it works with the kind of lower echelons of heavy lift launch vehicles down. So like Falcon 9's at the bottom of heavy lifters. Once you get into the heavy lift category, which is 25 tons and up, right? So super heavy lift category, that's what it's called. So we're getting into the realm of rockets like, well, New Glenn. New Glenn was huge to horizontally integrate. That is, I mean, did you see how big that transporter erector was? It was gigantic. because you're holding up a ridiculous rocket, right? Once you get into the realm of super heavy, so we're talking about vehicles that are 25 tons and up, it really makes a ton more sense to vertically integrate or use a mobile launcher. Now, once again, this isn't gospel. This isn't the end all be all. This doesn't mean that medium duty rockets can't be vertically integrated or heavy duty rockets can't be horizontally integrated. New Glenn 7x2. But once again, if you're trying to achieve in this context, if you're trying to achieve high flight rate with a super heavy class launch vehicle, vertical integration is favored. The Saturn V is a good example of this. Probably the best example. Saturn 1B, also vertically integrated, pretty much in the same lift class as Falcon 9, pretty much. Once again, Falcon 9's pretty much the upper echelons of where you should be doing horizontal integration. The reason why is it's easier. It is easier to vertically integrate a super heavy launch vehicle because all you need is a bridge crane. A bridge crane is a lot cheaper than a transporter erector for a rocket like the size of the Saturn V, right? Yeah, Kai, I have. But yeah, good questions, dude. I mean, PTC, that's very much my opinion. You can do anything you want, but I think if you're trying to rapidly fly a super heavy launch vehicle and make it reusable on top of that, vertical integration is the way that makes the most sense. Starship, New Glenn 9x4, Saturn V. That's what makes the most sense. Russian N1, hold my vodka. Yeah, exactly. The decision to horizontally integrate N1, it was definitely a choice. I'm not saying that contributed to its failures at all, but it's a way to do things. I mean, they needed a gigantic transporter erector. Keep in mind, it was just the Grasshopper was just a transporter erector. It wasn't it's not the launcher. It takes the N1 horizontally and sets it vertically on the pad. And then moves away from said pad. But yeah, that's definitely a vibe. I mean, that's a way to do things, I guess. Bigger the raw. Yeah. All right. I wonder if they will still need to bring it horizontal for transportation from the port to the integration facility. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. I mean, guys, a person is about like if you were standing next to the Grasshopper, the top of my mouse to the ground right here, that's about how tall a person would be. This is not the TUA is not a small piece of equipment. But look at all of it. It's a custom built thing. It's completely one-off. It's using hydraulics that are hard to source, etc., etc. All this custom fabrication when you could have just used a crane. That's the biggest reason. This thing is going to require constant maintenance. It's going to require constant checkout. Every time you put a rocket on this thing, you have hydraulics. The hydraulics are going to be under load. These are ridiculously big and huge throws. Long throw hydraulics are extremely difficult to do. So if you have a hydraulic that has it can reach out a long distance, the further, difficulty in keeping everything in line and not having stuff leak increases exponentially correlative to length. So, dude, these things probably wore out the seals maybe after 1 to 2 integrations, or maybe 3. It's hard to say because the N1 never achieved a semi consistent launch cadence. But I guarantee you these things would have, especially that thing, they would have broken after a while. And that's just wear and tear on your transporter erector, right? It's all wear and tear. That means this thing is going to need more maintenance, right? With a super heavy launch vehicle, a gantry crane, the bridge cranes are much more prevalent than something like that. It's a more off-the-shelf solution, right? Cranes are everywhere. That is not, right? So instead of having a one-off solution, right, you know, you use a crane to put it together. Because cranes cranes need to be maintained, but there's plenty more people out there that know how to maintain a bridge crane than that thing, right? And I 100% guarantee you that Blue started to figure that out when they started, when they started getting New Glenn out there, doing a hot fire, bringing the stupid transporter erector back, putting GS2 on the stage 2 hot firing jig, rolling that freaking thing out, putting it out there. Like, I'm pretty sure that, like I said, this is kind of contradictory to what I said the other day, dudes. It's kind of contradictory, but I've been saying Blue is not going to fly in 6 months, but let me say, I might still be right. I might be wrong. I don't know. But I will say this. The only way that they're flying in 6 months is if they already had a plan to switch to vertical integration well before the NG4 explosion. That's the only way that's the only way it's going to get done. If you're shooting from the hip and decided this like a month ago, yeah, no, that's not going to work. Like, Blue's a lot of things, but I don't think Dave Lim's an idiot. I really don't. I mean, does he have a hard job? Absolutely. Is he not from the aerospace industry? No, but he has a lot of experience with supply chains, product scaling, bringing products to market. He was point man on the Amazon Fire Stick. He was point man on Alexa. Like, the guy does have experience there. But keep in mind, Alexa and Fire Stick aren't a super heavy launch vehicle. So, what's the game plan on the second pad? I do believe Blue is working on a second pad at Complex 36, Vash. I'm fairly confident it was going to help them figure out vertical integration concepts. But the plans had to be accelerated because their only launch pad exploded. I think it was the plan for 9x4, but not for 7x2. Phil, that also makes sense, dude. That also makes sense. It is entirely possible that Blue had no intention of vertically integrating New Glenn 7x2 and absolutely doing it with 9x4, which is what we suspected before the NG4 explosion. That's what I expected, for the reasons that I just told you about bridge cranes and stuff. I thought they would have bought Mobile Launcher 2 and launched out of built in the VAB. That makes sense, right? So it's entirely possible that they were planning on doing that from the start, but now that you have no pads, it makes much more sense to build a pad that can vertically integrate 7x2 or 9x4. Do either one. It makes much more sense to accelerate that plan to just make another pad that can do either one, and then just start making more of that pad. That also explains why we've been hearing whispers of them not entirely knowing how they're going to vertically integrate 7x2. But yeah. Yeah, Phil, I'm going to modify my theory based off of that. I think that's right. That's most likely what happened. They wanted to vertically integrate 9x4, which is something I theorized that they wanted to do, because, once again, trying to horizontally integrate a rocket that's almost 400 feet tall is borderline insane. Just use a crane. There's a lot more cranes than the equipment available to do something like that. So if I had to guess, what they're most likely doing is figuring out the concept of operations to switch New Glenn 7x2 to an integration processing flow that's much similar to 9x4 to optimize it so they have one pad that could do either one. or, you know, one pad that can do 7x2, another one that can do 9x4 or 7x2. That's my guess. Which, I mean, that makes sense. So you're saying build a mobile VAB on rails at 36. Fluffy, if I had carte blanche and, you know, an unlimited amount of space and a blank check, I honestly... What I was going to say is, if I had that, and I was in charge of Blue right now, I would switch to mobile launchers, which is what we talked about the other day. I would switch to an ML design. An ML design offers the flexibility that they need to scale their architecture if they need to launch a bigger version of the rocket. With that all being said, I probably would not... People are going to think I'm stupid for saying this, and that's fine. I would not have pursued 9x4. I would have clean sheeted a super heavy launch vehicle design. Making 9x4 basically an extended New Glenn 7x2 is an interesting choice, to say the least. 9x4, if I'm remembering correctly from what Blue said about 9x4, they wanted to make 9x4 as kind of a New Glenn Block 2, right? But remember when I was talking about Firefly a little bit earlier in the day? Firefly wants to switch to Alpha Block 2 when Alpha Block 1, it barely works, arguably. They had one blow up on the test stand. And Alpha doesn't have the best track record of getting things into space. And I'm not trying to be a dick to Firefly. Like, I'm not. Like, so it's interesting that they're going to introduce upgrades into Alpha's design when you're going to upgrade stuff that barely works. And honestly, the way rocket science kind of works is you have to kind of give into entropy, which is why everybody calls Ryan Weber a pessimist. Like, you're going to try to upgrade a rocket that already has spotty reliability. What makes you think that that's going to increase reliability? It's not. Blue Origin moving to New Glenn 9x4 from 7x2 when 7x2 has barely flown is doing that exact same thing. And Blue decided to go right, historically, they decided to go right from New Shepard to building a heavy-duty launch vehicle, which nobody's ever done. Not even NASA did that. NASA started by putting people on top of ICBMs, right? And then they put people on a bigger ICBM. And then they put people on a bigger ICBM. And only then, when they understood launch vehicles pretty well, did they roll out the Saturn, because the Saturn was needed for lunar missions, right? The Saturn series of rockets. 7x2 did not hit performance targets. Yeah, Phil, that's the other thing. You're gonna introduce an upgraded version of a rocket that already has a mass deficit problem, and you're gonna do that by making it heavier by adding 9 more engines to it. By re-engineering your engine section. Once again, that's not to say that Blue can't do it. They will. They have the resources to do it, but what I'm trying to tell you is that that's going to take time because you have no experience launching super heavy launch vehicles. Like, it's not a knock at Blue. Like, the only guys, and just, you know, I think this kind of goes without saying, but I'm critical of all these launch companies, not because I hate them, because I want them to succeed. I don't hate any launch company. Chris Kemp is certainly trying to get me to hate him with Astra, but whatever, if that's what you want to do. Like, Conestoga can fix this. Nice. Not to mention it looks awful. Yeah. I just, once again, kind of feeds to this kind of thing that, and I'm not sure this is intentional at all, but Blue seems very preoccupied with how they look. at least at face value, and I know people that work there. I know it's not like this, but I think it's prudent to say, just in the off chance that maybe somebody higher up at Blue hears this. Like, I'm not trying to be a jerk. You guys, like the webcasts and everything, it come off as very pretentious, and they come off as very self-conscious and very like cognizant of like how you want the company to be perceived, rather than actually launching stuff to generate positive perception. That's the vibe that I get, and I'm not trying to be a jerk. Like, I actually like Ariane Cornell hosts the cast, and I think she does a good job. I know she's gung-ho about space. I've talked to her personally. I know she's gung-ho about space, and that's cool. What I'm trying to say is just have her just talk about space. That's what I do, and it works. But it seems like she is unable to do this because somebody is like, no. We have to make this like Good Morning America for rockets. And it comes off as kind of a halfway in between thing, and it sends mixed signals. That's just, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a communications guy, but I do have a lot of experience with, you know, live content, I'd say. Yeah, Grab, once again, that just seems to kind of, like, is the webcast indicative of how the company works? No, it's not. If they're farming out the production, if they're subcontracting production of casts, like some launch providers do with NSF, right? It's entirely possible that it's the production, it's whoever's directing that cast trying to make it look like that, trying to get that thing across. But then again, it should be up to Blue to look at the cast and be like, this isn't exactly what we're going for. I mean, clearly whoever's producing those casts is keeping their job, because we keep seeing casts in the format that Blue likes, right? Yeah, it just, that's a good way to say it, Moist. It just comes across as corpo slop. And he, like, dude, equal application of unbiasedness. Even SpaceX lately. Like, and I know that's not how it be with SpaceX. And like I said, I'm willing to give Blue the benefit of the doubt. I'm pretty sure that's just how they produce the casts, right? But also, like, SpaceX with the IPO and everything has gotten really, like that thing with the Starfall mission the other day. They advertised the Starfall mission and then they didn't show any of it. And then they have the stones to tell us that this is about on-orbit manufacturing and making life multiplanetary. The freaking hell it isn't. It's a defense contract. The hell it is, dude. Don't lie to us. Like, I don't know if I like that. But it sucks because Blue does a lot of really awesome stuff. Yeah, Grav, we know plenty of people that work there. I know it's not like that, but if upper management thinks that that's what they want to be, like, if upper management is concerned about perception of the company as a whole, that is all that is a distraction from actually launching things. I'm just putting it out there. Like, the reason why I'm so critical of the companies that I like the most, by a long shot, dudes. Like, I like Blue a lot. I think they've got a lot of really good stuff going for them. I'm critical because I want to see them succeed. Am I screaming into the void? Does anybody at Blue actually care? Probably not. I'm not trying to just sit here and tear them down all day. Like, does beer count as yeast? Does beer yeast count as on-orbit manufacturing? Yeah, I guess there was some other payloads, Vash, right? Like, Montana. Dude, what is up with those casts, man? Fix the casts, dudes, please. Ooh. Sorry, I still have the image search for the M1 rocket up. Oh my goodness. That's a nice. That's a very nice. I mean, arguably it's kind of junk, but also that's nice. It's a nice failed rocket you got there. Yeah, still pretty cool though. That's rolling out of the horizontal integration building. Those look like Soviet M62s if I'm looking at it, if I'm looking at that right. Why did they make it a weird non-Euclidean cone? Or just use a crane, yeah, right. The Starfall stream is a massive letdown. Yeah, the reason why SpaceX casts are the gold standard, Dave, is because they have people calling the casts that are really hype on rockets, and they let them do their thing, like Dan, like Jesse, like Kate, like yeah, Shiva in there too. I forget the other guy's name. Jake, I think is his name. Jake Berkowitz. I'm pretty sure that's his name. Sorry, that was off the top of my head. I don't remember. They do a good job. They really do. You can tell they're gung-ho about space. Like, that's how it comes off. Like, and I know that people at Blue are like that, too. I know the people that host the Blue Origin casts are like that. Like, yeah. I don't know. I don't know, man. Maybe they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Did the N1 even launch? The N1 had 4 launch attempts. All 4 of them failed. The first launch attempt, they had problems with the propulsion, and it blew up pretty much a little bit after max Q. The second one they went to launch had problems with ice in the fuel lines. It took off from the pad, got about 300 feet, and then fell back onto the pad and blew it up and destroyed it, and they never repaired it. They still haven't repaired it. They just said, never mind. The fourth one... The fourth one, I think, encountered ice. Or no, the third one was ice in the lines. The first mission was problems with the NK-15s. The engines. They had engine problems on the first flight. The second one, second one broke right after liftoff, fell right back on the pad. The third one had ice in the lines. And then the fourth one, they installed filters to combat ice in the lines, and it also made more ice in the lines, clogged, and it shut off. And then after that, the Politburo canceled the program. And not only did they cancel the N1 program, they ordered all the tooling, all the propulsion, every single bit of it to be scrapped. No evidence that we ever tried to go to the moon, because if there's evidence of the N1 rocket around, that means that we tried to go to the moon and failed, and we can't be seen failing, because that's how they did things over there. Yeah, they ordered everything scrapped, so what Kuznetsov and a couple of other guys did is take the remaining NK-33s and NK-15s, the N1 first stage engines, and they paid people to smuggle them out of Baikonur and put them in a warehouse, a climate-controlled warehouse, and just, yeah. And then they went back and said, oh yeah, we scrapped all of those. And they sat in a warehouse till the end of the Cold War. After the Soviet Union collapsed, Americans, keen to keep the Russian aerospace program going so they wouldn't make weapons for adversaries, went over there and said, hey, we'll buy engines from you. You guys got engines? And they're like, oh yeah, we got plenty. They're like, what do you mean? They're like, oh, we got plenty of those things. And then they showed them that they brought them to that warehouse full of engines, like Raiders of the Lost Ark, full of all the engines that were left over from the N1 program. And here's the cool part. Those engines found their way into Antares, the Antares rocket. First 3 flights of the Antares rocket were using engines that were manufactured in the 60s. Those were those engines. And then those failed, and then they never used them again. Yeah. Oops. Turns out, you know, century-year-old rocket engine, or half-century-year-old rocket engines as a low-cost solution wasn't really the best idea. Yeah. That is also how the Atlas III rocket ended up with an RD-180 below it, because the U.S. was keen to keep Energomash engineers at Energomash to make engines for Atlas instead of making engines for China or North Korea or whatever. I mean, that happened anyway because of course it did. And then if we did it at the behest of our own propulsion research, we sacked basically our entire propulsion research program, except for like the RL-10. That's about it. RL-10 and shuttle engines. And the RS-68, that's about it. Yeah, well, Vash, remember, the engines were kept by Russians, not Soviets. Differences. Russia's not the Soviet Union, 2 different countries. We got Raptor now. Well, yeah, Skeleton. Yeah, now, this was 40 years ago, dude. Yeah, between the space shuttle and us using Russian rocket engines to keep the Russian aerospace engineers employed so they wouldn't go work for North Korea or Iran or whatever, basically sacked our own in-house propulsion program. Yeah, that's why you really didn't see a lot of new engines coming in the 90s, with the exception of the RS-68, and that's about it. And propulsion research in the U.S. really only started coming about after SpaceX. And when everybody realized that you could make a commercial vehicle. So now propulsion research is fine. There's all kinds of engines. Between Firefly, Stoke, Relativity, SpaceX with the Merlin engine and the Raptor engine. So Stoke has the Andromeda engine and the Nova engine. There's Relativity with their Aeon engine and their Aeon V engine, the vacuum optimized one. Who else is there? So Firefly has the Reaver engines, and then whatever their solution to the Antares thing is. It's not another Reaver engine. It's Eclipse engine. There is tons of stuff. Heck, this video was posted today, Impulse, about their Deneb engine. Their Deneb engine is an upper stage engine that was designed by Tom Mueller. Tom Mueller's the guy that engineered the Merlin 1D engine and Raptor to an extent, not entirely Raptor. But Impulse is looking at making low-cost upper stages. Here. Yahoo! Miranda engine, that's it, no wrath, yeah. Yeah, Rocket Lab with their Archimedes engine. There is just a cornucopia of freaking propulsion out there. Blue Origin with the BE4, BE3, BE3U, BE7. Like, a criticism that I had, like, you know, when Jared rolled out the Block 1S SLS, right? The standardized version with the Centaur upper stage.
Oh, this is space. I'm in space.
Hey, Bio, gifted 5 subs. Thanks, man. When he did that, I was a little bummed out because I'm like, we have all this propulsion around from all these different companies, and the best you could come up with is a Centaur. Now, the reason why is because Centaur exists and it's already made, right? And that's fine. That's okay. But just RL-10s again? We have all these other engines. We have B3Us exist, and you opted for a Centaur with RL-10s? That's it? Any news on the rocket engine that exploded at the neck on the test stand? You streamed it. Started fires. That's a long list nowadays, dude. Except that they'll have to modify it so much it will not actually be a Centaur. Like the ETSLS tank. It's the adapter, Hellfish. They can, like, I know I've said in the past, you can't put a Centaur on top of SLS. That's not entirely true. And I tried not to be disingenuous here. The context of that statement is that the time it would take to modify a stage adapter to work with a off-the-shelf Centaur would take as much time as the EUS. That was the criticism there. It's not that you can't do it. You can do it. You can do it with an off-the-shelf thing, but that means your adapter is going to be insanely complicated because you are adapting an off-the-shelf component and using it in a way that it was never designed for. If anything, the criticism there is that it's not an off-the-shelf component anymore now, is it? Even if you don't modify the stage, even if you don't modify the stage at all, you still have to make a custom adapter for it, which that won't take particularly a long time. But like I said, there's definitely unknown unknowns there that they haven't taken into account. That's going to take some time to get it right. That was a NASA engine, or so I thought. It happened around Artemis too. If anything, it was a test engine, and it probably was in-house NASA. Yeah. Can't be any slower than Dynetics. Spoiled. To do the flame trench dock, I went back and reread it. I reread that OIG report, dude. I don't know if you were here, but as much as I want to sit here and dump on all the contractors, like Boeing, you want to dump on Boeing for the EUS. I want to dump on Bechtel for ML2, cost overruns, etc., etc. Dynetics is... No, they screwed up. Oh, Dynetics is not ideal. It seems like NASA kept trying to change what the universal stage adapter is. And Dynetics eventually said, we don't know what you want, and we don't know when you want it, so we're not going to sit here with a thumb up our butt all day. We're going to go do something else. And NASA said, no, you can't do that. Come back. We'll pay you. And they're like, all right. But they also... That's not really great. And as much as you don't want to dump on all these commercial contractors, it's not their fault. The big problem, it really isn't. Like, and I was trying to prove this the other day when we went over the OIG report. I can say it with a much straighter face now because I've collected my thoughts about this. A lot of these problems with these programs having ridiculous ballooning cost is changing mission requirements, right? Changing the Artemis program, changing the missions, Artemis 2, 3, 4, etc., etc., and NASA not designing the stuff in-house. NASA they contracted out the design. So if you contract out the design and then you change the mission requirements, what's going to happen? Oops. It's no coincidence that all this stuff would have been ready, even with the OIG's projections around the same time, because all of these programs were, for the most part, put on life support in 2019, 2020, when Jim Bridenstine, the 13th NASA administrator, decided to take Artemis 1, 2, and 3 and make them SLS Block 1. So he bought more interim cryogenic, he bought 2 more ICPSs, right? And then focused on getting a launch done and basically put the EUS program on life support for a number of years. That is the main driver of cost overruns for the exploration upper stage. Sorry. Are you still flying? With this modified Centaur 5, could Vulcan possibly launch Orion to low Earth orbit? No, too heavy. Well, Connor, maybe. Huge maybe. If Vulcan did launch an Orion into low Earth orbit, Orion would have to use a lot of its service module propellant to circularize the orbit. Vulcan Centaur VC6 would get you maybe 95% of the way there. The service propulsion system for Orion would have to be used for your final circularization burn to the tune of probably 800 meters a second to about a kilometer a second, which is a little bit over, or a little bit under half of the delta V for Orion with its SPS. So, long story short, if you launched Orion, if you could, like, provided the structures play nice, right? If you could launch an Orion on VC6, it could make it pretty much to the ISS, and that's about it. And even an ISS mission would be kind of pushing it. Does that include the SRMs eating themselves on the way up? Phil, if what happened on Vulcan Cert 2 happened with an Orion on top of Vulcan Centaur, the Orion would not have made it into space. Now, here's the thing. Given what we know about the adapter issues, will this mutant Centaur be ready before the estimated ready date for the EUS? Yeah, Kai, I see it. I have the link up. When did they project that the EUS would have been ready? In its March 2026 financial minute report, Boeing estimated work on the first EUS would cost $2.9 billion by the time it was complete, including any fees earned. At the time, NASA deterministic or best case schedule completion was August of 2028. November of 2028 for the first flight. At the time NASA's deterministic or best case schedule completion was August of 2028. Project the delivery of the first flight-ready EUS would have been delayed until November of 2028. Approximately 7.5 years later than originally planned, Figure 1 depicts Boeing's historical estimate. Huh. Wow. What's that huge bump in 2025? I didn't notice that last time because I was looking over here where the program was funded and then defunded, and they just decided not to show that. That might be from House Resolution 1 if I had to guess. Hat trick for France? Who was it, Don? Was it Mbappe? That guy is disgustingly good at soccer, man. He's like, real deal. Dembele. Wow. All right, sweet. Did they cut off initial funding from multiple tables, or is that just one? All of these cost projections start at different times, which is very strange to me. I'm particularly interested in why they started EUS funding in 2020 when the project was initially funded. The contract was awarded in 2017. I'm noticing some weird incongruencies. I don't know if that's the right word. It's just weird. So this contract started in February 2017, and they made it a thing in the background to say that this whole thing kind of got kicked off in 2015. Like, okay, so if they selected the Boeing company to design and manufacture the EUS in February 2017, oh, Jesus. Oh, inconsistencies. Yeah, that's the right word. The agency incorporated EUS work into its existing SLS core stage contract with Boeing. Well, there's your first problem. We pointed that out yesterday. The scope of the work included design and delivery of one EUS and one interstage to connect it to the core stage and associated test articles. Okay, so there's your problem right there. Like, so one, that was stupid incorporating it into the core stage contract. Do you know why? The EUS is not the core stage. Those are two different things. First stages aren't second stages, so incorporating them under one contract is a, frankly, stupid way of procuring things. Okay. Two, the contract is for one flight-ready EUS. One. In February of 2017, the Artemis program architecture called for the EUS to be ready for the Artemis II mission. And then all subsequent missions after that would be using the EUS instead to build Gateway in the 2020s to get to the moon in the late 2020s. That was the plan at the time. Plan ended up, in a roundabout way, ended up being the same, but whatever. Minus the Gateway. The contract, not only is it roped into SLS core stages, the scope of the work included design and delivery of one EUS for $962 million. This added $962 million to the contract and set a delivery date for the first EUS in March of 2021. Guys, I could have told you that this contract would have failed, knowing what I know now. I didn't say it at the time, but my understanding of contracting structure almost a decade ago is not what it is now. That's bad. In March of 2026, NASA issued a stop work order for Boeing to suspend further work on the EUS. By this time, the EUS portion of the contract value had more than doubled to almost $2 billion, while the delivery date for the upper stage was unspecified. Well, yeah, you failed to, not failed to mention, they mention it down here. That way to procure things is frankly idiotic. I think even me, if I had bothered to read the fine print at the time, February 2017, we were hitting Kerbal hard, and Space News wasn't as popular as it is now. So I really didn't get into understanding contract structures and stuff really until the pandemic, but that's another story. VAS thruster update. VAS's 10 kilowatt Hall thruster firing in a vacuum chamber, designed for VAS satellites and future space stations. Our in-house electric propulsion system builds on NASA's H-10 heritage and has demonstrated 3,000 second specific impulse and a 1 to 10 kilowatt operation. How much thrust, Andrew? Any updates on Northrop Grumman's BOLE? Nope. They're super tight-lipped about it. Yeah, see, in 2018, they deprioritized work on the EUS to focus on the first core stage delivery. So, this contract procurement and then the decision so they awarded the contracts. They gave them $962 million. So, in February 2017, they added 962 million, right, for a delivery date in 2021. So that probably wasn't upfront. It was 962 million over the course of 4 years, right? So if that's the case, why does their OIG projection at EUS cost not include that information? That's very curious. The reason why I say that is because that would make NASA look bad, to be honest with you. The OIG seems very, I don't know. Do I know more than the OIG? No. But the OIG seems very hasty to point the finger at contractors before they point the finger at NASA. But frankly, like if you go down here to the background, if you read this synopsis right here, Bechtel seems incompetent, right? And like I said, is Bechtel known for nickel and diming government contracts to make more money? Yes, absolutely. Is that unethical? Yeah, a little bit. But also at the same time, A, they should have known that because it's not like they haven't been doing it for like 60 years, right? And B, it makes Bechtel sound like, you know, it makes them sound like they're incompetent, right? But also at the same time, the mobile launcher is there, and even the GAO or even the OIG admits that it would have been done basically in a couple of months. So are they incompetent or are they not? Like, cool stream, really enjoying it. Thanks, Chris. I'm glad you like it, dude. Right on. Bio, thank you for the 5 subs, dude. I appreciate you. Sounds like the EUS was basically doomed to fail from the start. Yeah, Rarest. I've noticed that. Some of these contracts were procured under Charlie Bolden, who was the 12th NASA administrator. Charlie Bolden was a space shuttle pilot, ex-Marine. He'd been to space plenty of times. But like the thing is I'll be real with you. This contract procurement structure is awful. Like, and that's on him. And then I love Jim, dude. I like Jim. He was an awesome NASA administrator for the time. And I think if he had another 4 years, he probably would have fixed a lot of the glaring issues here. But a lot of these program slips with the EUS, the USA, ML2, etc., are because of his decision to refactor the Artemis program to use the Block 1 configuration for not only the first mission, but the second and the third mission. But he made that decision because Block 1 was closer to flying on a more regular schedule than Block 1B was. The reality of this situation is that SLS should have been designed with the EUS to begin with. And that goes back to Charlie Bolden and how they decided to come up with the architecture that way. And that's not necessarily his fault. That's the Augustine Commission's fault. We talked about that a little bit earlier on the Space News. But yeah, that's... Jim really pissed you off when it came to Isaacman's nomination. Yeah. I don't know, dude. Maybe he's pissed he didn't get to finish the job. I'd be mad, but I wouldn't denigrate another NASA administrator because of it. What was that? You need 5 more subs? No, I was thanking you for the ones you already gave. Don't worry about it. Vast thruster has 500 newtons. Or, no, 5.
Oh, this is space. I'm in space.
Thank you. It's 0.5 newtons or something around there. It should be in line with typical HET scaling laws. Well, if you insist. I didn't insist. I insisted the opposite way, and you did the whatever. It doesn't matter. Thank you. It's fine. Thank you. I appreciate you. Is there a contract number in the EUS for that report? Which report, Hellfish? Sorry. Bio distracted me. Hey, you too, buddy. I didn't say that. I said thank you. Is there a contract number for the EUS in this report? What do you mean a contract number? The EUS initially, the contract was awarded to Boeing. And it, once again, I don't understand why they would do this. They just roped it into the core stage contract and added $1 billion to the core stage program and changed the stipulations of the core stage contract to now include the upper stage, which, once again, that's a frankly idiotic way to do things. You know, like I said it before, but I'll say it again. It warrants reiteration. It's dumb to take your upper stage funding and rope it into your core stage funding. Do you know why? The upper stage is not the core stage. Those are two different things, so those should require two different contracts. That's borderline shady. That's a really weird way of doing that. I don't know why you do that. I don't know whoever made that decision. I would be questioning them. Why would you rope the upper stage into the first stage contract? That's a little bit sus. That's a little bit suspect. To be 100% honest, that's a little weird. Guys, I'm not going to sit here. This is not, correlation does not equal causation, to be 100% honest with you. But right around the time when that contract was awarded, NASA's head of the Human Exploration Operations Mission Directorate got fired because of corruption. Doug Lavero, look it up. Kind of was a little bit of a footnote there. Don't know if he got fired for corruption because he was talking to Boeing about contract requirements that personally should have been open source. So NASA put out a contract for the lander, right? For HLS or a lander, right? And before the contract became public information, so the companies could kind of compete on the contract, he was telling Boeing the stipulations of the contract. That's a little bit suspect. And also right around the same time, the EUS gets roped into the core stage contract. How the heck are you ever, okay, like, honestly, how are you expecting cost to be controlled when you do that? How are you going to extrapolate core stage unit cost versus EUS unit cost if they're in the same contract? That makes no sense. The only way that makes a lot of sense is if you're looking to block buy exploration upper stages and procure SLSs as a whole. Like, you're going to block buy 10 EUSs and 10 core stages, right? Which may have been what they were trying to do. But A, it never has been done like that. And B, the contract specifically was for one flight-ready EUS and one flight-ready interstage. So that's a little bit suspect there. I don't like that. That's a dumb way of doing things. And the interesting thing here, dudes, is if you go down here to, I have to add this to the flame trench doc. If you go down here to the Halo module, Northrop Grumman subcontracted the Halo module out so much that they literally didn't do anything. They were just overseeing a bunch of subcontractors that were basically putting the stupid thing together. And the subcontraction management got so bad that the OIG couldn't get a good grasp on how much the damn thing was going to cost. Due to the projected end date far into the future and limited availability of contractor monthly financial management reports, we were unable to perform a complete cost projection for Halo. Red flag. Big red flag. Big red flag. Like, once again, dude, I can't sit here and say conclusively that this is very suspect behavior. We'll just say it's a strange way to procure things, and we'll call it at that, a very unorthodox way of trying to procure spacecraft parts. See, stuff like that doesn't bode very well for me saying that this is a NASA management problem. That is, I'm not saying conclusively it's corruption, obviously, for legal purposes, right? But also, that's a little bit shady, I'll say, at best. A little bit of an unorthodox way to do your accounting. Like, obfuscating contractor monthly financial management reports because you horizontally integrated the program so ridiculously hard is borderline money laundering. Like that is a very strange way of doing that. I'm just putting it out there. And yeah, roping second stage contract into first stage contracts, that's very sus. I gotta add that to the flame trench, Doc. Give me 1 second. Like, it's a big red flag with a yellow hammer sickle and stars on it. Yeah, for sure. Sorry, let me just catch up with chat. Is limited availability an inability to provide or unwilling to provide? It's inability, Dean. If you have government contracts, you have to show your financials because of that whole, embezzling money thing. But it's not embezzlement if it's a contracted service, though. The problem is, what's the service for? We don't know. I mean, actually, you flagged it blue, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I do not agree that everything that Isaacman has done. It seems like he was dumped into a dumpster fire. Exactly, Techno Wizard. That's exactly it. That is something, after talking to him and kind of listening to him, I've listened to Sawyer and Jack's interview with him a bunch of times. Yeah, Jared is making lemonade with the frankly ridiculous lemons that he's been given. I get what he's trying to do. What I'm saying is, what he's trying to do is very similar to what Jim was trying to do in 2019. And Jim couldn't do it, partially because his term ended. And that ended up kicking the can down the road and making all the problems that this OIG report is here for in the first place. My thing is like, how do we know that this isn't going to happen again? Canceling the US, canceling the USA, canceling Halo. I mean, I can understand canceling Halo because it's a pile of junk, but canceling the mobile launcher. How do we know that this isn't going to create problems for NASA procuring SLSs in the future? Like, what happens to SLS at this point? What happens to this standardized configuration? You're going to fly this standardized configuration like 3 times and then call it a day? There's so much more to this than just, we got rid of these programs that aren't aligned with NASA's goals, right? And one could argue that the big thing is that, commercial will pick up the slack. And I think that's what Jared is banking on, and that's fine. That's okay. But that in itself is a whole can of worms, because why does NASA exist at this point if the commercial contractors are shouldering all of the risk? The whole point, I talked about this a little bit earlier too. But it warrants reiteration. NASA's job is to build out commercial markets in the applications of aerospace and aeronautical engineering that aren't profitable for a startup to try and endeavor, because it'll never get done. Like super heavy lift. There's no market for super heavy launch vehicles. SpaceX is creating the market for super heavy launch vehicles with Starship and Starlink V3, data center, et cetera, but there, for the most part, there is none. There's no market for that. Maybe there could be a market someday if somebody makes a super heavy launch vehicle and launches it a lot. I would argue that that's NASA's job, not SpaceX's job, right? SpaceX and Blue Origin are shouldering all the risk at this point because SLS is finished. SLS is SLS works and it's pretty much operational with save the Centaur upper stage, etc., right? But NASA saving money, you know, and contracting out stuff to commercial providers in the guise of saving money is also farming out the risk. Because the inherent problem here is that NASA can't be seen failing. And failing is part of the process with any particular type of rocket science. If your engineering is good, you won't fail when there's people on board. Challenger, Apollo 1, Columbia. But NASA absolutely has to, or at least the stakeholders in NASA, Congress need to understand that that's part of the process. They've inadvertently created an environment where, you know, NASA can't be seen failing, and we can't be seen failing. If they're seen failing, they're going to lose funding, they're going to look bad, etc., right? They've created this, they've fostered this environment where the risk is being mitigated to commercial entities, which is dumb. That is the opposite of what NASA should be doing. Hey, Caroline, $15. In no way do I have your knowledge of the space industry, but in an area of professional management, this is worse than a red flag. It's irresponsible and suggests a lot of sus attitude. Yeah, Caroline, that's what I mean. Like, yeah, well, that's good that, you know, you have an experience there kind of agrees with me, because I'm looking at that procurement and just... Like I said, what was Charlie Bolden's administration doing? What are you doing? Why would you let Boeing? Why would not even let Boeing? Why would they farmed out the design of the EUS, right? And then roped it into the core stage contract for a singular procurement of an EUS for a rocket they want to launch 20 times. What logically is the reasoning there? There is none. That the only thing we could default to is malevolence. Like that's ridiculous. Makes it harder to cancel. Yeah, it also makes it harder to do. It's not even about making it harder to cancel, Phil. Like, that makes it so you can't trace where that not you can't trace, like that makes it obfuscates where that $962 million is going. Yeah, you know, people, I'm very, everybody, okay, let me explain, all right? Let me explain this. I am very skeptical to take oh, it's just a pork project. Oh, they're just milking the government for money. I'm very skeptical to take that view. The reason why is because I honestly and truly think anytime any particular aerospace contract goes over budget, that's what everybody defaults to, because they think people think they know about contract procurement in the US government. The reality is that they know dick, all right? But that doesn't mean that there aren't pork projects as well. So what is a pork project? That is basically just the government awarding contracts to a company with to keep jobs in a congressional district and so or something, and you never really do anything. It's just kind of life support for a congressional district, and it keeps it going because, you know, capital infusions in my congressional district will buy me more votes, etc., etc. That's the whole idea. Now, apply that logic to this and tell me that makes sense. where the hell else was the EUS going to get made? It was going to be, there's no other facility that can produce an 8.4 meter core upper stage than Michoud in Louisiana. So what's the point of making it the same contract? What is the point there? How does that make pork projects? How does that do that? How does that, I mean, does it make more jobs? Yes, absolutely. All right. I would argue that if you contracted for 10 exploration upper stages instead of 1, you could make more pork that way. And to be fair, guys, I don't have any problems with, you know, huge aerospace contracts being shoveled out to different congressional districts. I have no problem with the jobs program. I really don't. I just would like it if they made something like the B-21 Raider. Let's take the B-21, for instance. Northrop Grumman finished that thing under budget, ahead of schedule, right? And now they're retooling for mass production. That is tons of jobs for wherever the heck they make that thing. I think it's in California. And we get 100 bombers out of it. That's fine. I'm cool with that. That's great. As long as we get the 100 bomber part happens. Like, I want that part. That's kind of important. Like, the point is that roping these two together, right, doesn't really fit that bill. Like, if you were going to do a pork project, you'd do a block buy of SLS. You'd buy 10 of them, and then you'd buy 10 EUSs. Indefinite quantity, indefinite delivery. This makes no sense. That would not make the thing more likely to be canceled. That would make it less likely to be canceled, because you're tooling up to not mass produce these things, to produce a high unit quantity, not one. Got to run and get food. You'll be back in 30 minutes. We'll be tooling up for Flame Trench by then, Drew, so I'll see you at the start of the trench. Bluz, you're asking, if NASA did a factory reset, canceled Artemis and all the contracts, would it be easier to get back quicker? No. If you clean sheeted the Artemis program at this point, you can kiss going to the moon in this decade goodbye. If we were able to clean sheet a design and get a blank check and procure it like Apollo, that would be expensive, but you could probably get back in the early 2030s. At this particular point in time, 2035, I would say, like best case scenario, but that's best case scenario. Clearly, this OIG report is evidence that the best case scenario is not happening. I would say 10 years from now, if you clean sheeted a super heavy launch vehicle and refactored the entire Artemis architecture from the ground up, sure. You should peak the original 2019 contract. Well, they said the contract is from February 2017 in that OIG report, did they not? I have it up. It's right there. See last if possible. Hey, dude, how are you feeling? Any plans for after hours? If the guys from Flame Trench want to play Battlefield tonight, I'm in. I will play Battlefield. Ever tried BattleBit Remastered? No. This is where you need to start. Looking at board members and CEOs that bought new houses at the time, because I bet you we would have winners. Well, Goalie, I made it a thing to mention that the head of NASA's Human Exploration Operations Mission Directorate at the time that this contract was awarded was fired for corruption, for telling Boeing insider information. Now, that insider information was for lander procurement, but at the same time, at that particular moment in time in the Artemis program, this is before HLS came on the books. At that particular moment in time, SLS was still going to deliver the lander in a co-manifested payload with the EUS. That's weird. Hey, Patton, what's going on, buddy? The stage adapter is borderline fraud in your eyes. It's a metal tube with reinforcements. Yeah. Yes and no. There's things with the stage adapter that are... It got $61.2 million in 2020 at the end of 2019. Click on the sub awards and check out who Boeing was spreading the cash to. Oog? Okay. Are they buying some synthesizers, or? Oh, Futuramic. Futuramic makes a lot of tooling for SLS, which is cool. They Futuramic makes assembly line manufacturing equipment for Detroit. They're a company out of Michigan. They make they make the equipment for the assembly lines for rockets too. They made the vertical integration jig that's in High Bay 2 in the VAB, which is cool. We like Futuramic. They're cool. See Futuramic again. Chicago Pneumatic. Frontier Electronics 7.7. I'm not against NASA being willing to spend a premium, but if they're going to do that, in your opinion, they should be mandated to select from the smallest companies capable of satisfying the contract. Yes, that's already a thing, Aqualux. It's already a thing. It's small business initiatives are all over NASA. They have to do it for federal compliance. That's why there's so many frigging contractors, dude. Because if we didn't spread all the contracts around and did everything under one roof, we wouldn't be spreading the money around equitably, but we would have a space program. Just saying. So why did they select Boeing? Subcontraction. Same way that same reason why they selected Northrop Grumman. Also, you think of Moog as a music-related company. It was... No, not at all. Moog Music makes synthesizers. It was a joke, dude. They make really good synthesizers, actually. And theremins, too. It was a joke. That Moog Music is not Moog Incorporated. Those are two different. Sorry, that was a joke. That's funny to me though. Really good synths. Those synths are really nice. Kind of want one. Yeah, there's also Moog automotive parts. I have some Moog bushings for the Coronet sitting in the garage. So, once again, fellas, you know, we're going to this contract. It seems like the first awarded parts of the contract were in 2019, but the OIG report says that they were selected in 2017. And that $962 million was added to the core stage contract for delivery date of the first EUS in March of 2021. It's very interesting to me because the OIG report starts in 2020. And then if you show the contract structure right here, the Space Launch System Stages Production and Evolution contract, it starts in 2020 as well. And if you view the transaction table, like, does anybody know? Like, I'm not saying there's anything weird going on here. The OIG probably just took this data and put it in their report. The signed contract that I've seen was signed in 2019. Interesting. Then why does the OIG report talk like that it was awarded? Let me read the footnotes. The SLS core stages contract uses a hybrid cost plus award fee, cost plus incentive fee structure. Cost plus award fee contract is a cost reimbursement contract that provides for a fee consisting of A, a base amount fixed at inception of the contract, and B, an award amount based upon judgmental evaluation by the government of the contract performed. Cost plus incentive fee is a cost reimbursement contract that provides for an initially negotiated fee to be adjusted later by a formula based on the relationship of total allowable costs to total target costs. Wow. The combined contract for all the stages canceled the previous two separate contracts and they were closed. The combined contract for all stages canceled the previous two separate contracts. I don't like that. It seems like there was a contracting structure here that was in place before 2019, and then in 2019 it was restructured. SLS core stages contract is composed of multiple contract line items, CLINs, used to identify tasks to be performed and the cost estimates to complete those tasks. In February of 2020, NASA added CLIN 10 to track EUS costs. We only considered CLIN 10 in associated award fees when determining the contract value for the EUS, even though additional EUS work may have been commingled with other CLINs. As of May of 2026, no date was listed in the contract's delivery schedule corresponding with NASA's final acceptance of EUS flight hardware. For sake. Yeah, see? So that means for 3 years. So I'm really wondering for those 3 years where that $960 million went. That'd be, it definitely wasn't for making a stage. That's for sure. So, that's a little weird. NASA's definitely to blame, but these contracts are sketch. I'm gonna add that last part to the section about the EUS. The EUS funding chart begins in 2020, even though EUS work started and money was awarded to Boeing starting in 2017. The contracts were rolled into one in 2020, and the chart shows this. OIG admitted that well, I'll just make this another footnote, and I'll make sure to talk about this on Flame Trench. Like, see, once again, fellas, I am hesitant to say any particular project is pork or a waste of money in the government, especially when it comes to procuring super heavy launch vehicles, because who's to say how expensive a super heavy launch vehicle is when there's no market? How can you discern a price when there's no market for something, right? I think that's a very fair point. Like, what everybody says SLS is expensive. What is it expensive compared to? Saturn V? On Saturn V, SLS is light years less expensive because they didn't need to build a VAB, nor launch pad, nor production facility, nor test stands from scratch. They used all the Apollo stuff. Right? But here's the, like, it's basically, with modern spaceflight discourse among pundits, it's basically gotten to a point where any project that I don't like is pork. And that's why I'm hesitant to do that. I'm hesitant to say, like, this is misuse of funds, unless you can prove it. Unless you can prove it. Look, man, I understand correlation doesn't equal causation. I get it. But also, the contracting structure for SLS is frankly atrocious. And it's the contracting structure for and the subcontracting structure for frankly a lot of these programs are so convoluted that NASA can't even figure it out. How could that be anything else? Like, seriously, how could it be anything else? Prove it, right? Like, I think, you know, between the OIG report and showing how the contract structuring works, I think we could prove beyond a reasonable doubt that some of this money was not used for procurement of upper stages. That does not necessarily mean that this is entirely on contractors, okay? If NASA knew that this was going on, or they knew that there must have been OIG reports going on at the time, right? There must have been government accountability reports going on at the time. There must have been something. There must have been some kind of evidence that this could be happening. I lost my train of thought. Crap. What was I saying? There had to have been some evidence here of this being weird behavior, and either nobody saw it, or, like, if NASA can't even keep track of where the money's going at a federal level, well, guess what? That's a criminal offense if you can't track where the money can go. That's on you. That's what I was trying to say. It's on you, dude. Like, yeah, that's what I mean. The OIG can't even keep track of it. So if the OIG can't keep track of it as a third-party investigator, what the heck is Office of Management and Budgeting doing at NASA? It's called OMB. What is OMB doing? Can you not keep track of your funds? You don't. You have to. You have to discern where all the money is going. The fact that the OIG can't do it is very telling. If the accounting is so convoluted that you can't untangle it later, then it is shenanigans. Yeah, it's very easy to keep track of your money, Lord Google. Like, we do it personally. Like, you could keep track of your personal finances. It doesn't take a lot of extra effort. You just be careful with how you spend and just keep track of stuff. Like, I'm not saying you have to write down every damn transaction in your damn checkbook, because nobody does that nowadays, right? Like, but also at the same time, dude, that's... Bolden was either incompetent or malicious. I don't attribute malice what could be attributed to incompetence. Occam's razor, right? Spoiled? I'm wondering whether he gave a frick or not. Like... It's really hard to have clean books when you cook them. Better just have holes than obvious lies. Yeah, Todd, that's what I mean. You know, if NASA budgeting can't keep track of this stuff, and OIG can't keep track of this stuff, I am going to say that that's probably embezzling government funds. What else would it be? What else would it be? I mean, like, once again, I am not willing to say that SLS or anything is a port project until proven otherwise, all right? You got to have receipts, right? Now, to be honest, we're never going to have we're never going to know where all that money went, because in the applications at Northrop Grumman with the Halo module, they don't know. But what I can tell you is this. Boeing with the EUS was contracted to make one EUS. They may have done some preliminary design work in 2017. It seems like the majority of the money was awarded in 2020. That was 6 years ago to make one upper stage. Now, once again, the program was shelved and put on life support from basically 2020 to 2023. And that will create cost overruns. But a $2 billion cost overrun? What are these people doing? Where's this money going? $2 billion is not enough to... That's way too much to cover the spread of salaries from aerospace engineers. Believe me, I know plenty of aerospace engineers. They don't get paid that well. They come after you for owing $200. Bingo. Like, I'm not trying to jump on the political soapbox here, Chernobyl, but if I, as a personal person, can't keep track of my finances and disclose them correctly to the government, I go to jail. Yeah, Aqualex, we're kind of out of time. I got to kind of get ready for Flame Trench in the next 10 minutes, but screw it. It's enough time. Let's see. From 2018, page 25. I have both of the reports that you guys just linked up. Just remind me in 10 minutes. I know I'm going to dig into these reports, and I'm going to freaking... I got to get ready for Flame Trench in 10 minutes, all right? We're going to... So if you like this conversation, just on a side note, I'm going to keep talking about this, but with two of my buddies from NSF. We're going to do... Yeah. Flame Trench is a show where we talk about what's going on in the spaceflight industry, and the OIG report's the big thing. So we're going to talk about that. So, Phil, this is George. You said page 25. Flawed contract management practices contributed to SLS cost increases, schedule delays, and excessive award fees. We found several poor contract management practices by NASA contributed to SLS programs' cost and schedule overruns. First, contrary to federal acquisition regulation guidance, NASA lacks visibility into Boeing stages' contract cost because all three of the company's key activities, development of the 2 core stages and 1 EUS, are commingled into the same contract line item. Jeez, it's like EJ said that already. Huh. Wow. Ah. That's a shady way of doing things. You know why? Because it obfuscates costs. That's weird. Second, despite significant cost increases and schedule delays, as of September 2017, NASA had rated Boeing's performance as excellent in 3 periods and very good in 3 others, awarding it $323 million or 90% of the available award and incentive fees. Given the SLS program's cost overages and schedule delays, we question the nearly $64 million of these award fees already provided to Boeing. Third, contracting officers approved contract modifications and issued task orders to several contractors without proper authority. Oh, God. Finally, as NASA and Boeing struggle with completing the first 2 core stages, the agency's plans are on hold for acquiring additional core stages, which in turn jeopardizes launch schedules for future missions that require the rocket, including Europa Clipper, which is in space because it was launched on a Falcon Heavy at the time of this stream. This PDF is from 2018. Or no, 2024? When was this made? Excuse me. Excuse me for a moment, please. Yeah. 2018. Well, NASA has taken some positive steps since January 2018 to address these long-standing issues, including requesting a review of Boeing's estimating system, adding an experienced manager to monitor SLS production, and changing the procurement process to improve internal controls. The impact of these actions on improving Boeing's future cost performance is uncertain. That right there is why spec exists. That's why this contract exists. The stages production and evolution contract. That's why it exists. Because of this report. Yep, that's why they redesigned the contract in 2019, and that's why when the investigator general started looking at funding procurement here, it starts in 2020 because they started from spec by their own admission, which means that $962 million over 3 years is, for the most part, unaccounted for work. Like, guys, you tell me, am I wrong? I don't see any other way of interpreting this. It's not, I mean, we could do more digging, but this is pretty cut and dry, dude. Where did that money go? And I mean, once again, NASA's HAOMD, the guy that was running human exploration operations, got fired for disclosing information to Boeing. Some shady, all right, dude, I very rarely swear during the day. Some shady ass shit was going on here. That's ridiculous. For your timeless knowledge. Oh, thanks, Sun Temple. I appreciate you. Like, guys, it's fraud. It's like, that's what it is. This is fraud and like embezzlement. This is, well, not embezzlement. Embezzlement is when a politician takes public funds and uses it for private services. That, dude, if, like I said, if I did this and I couldn't account for 962 million, I'd be in jail. Like, related to the firing, headline on 24. It's 4:30. Frick! Is this 24 on this one? I checked 1901, dude. 19001. I'm not... I can't believe this. I did, like... Once again, it looks like the conclusions that I had on Wednesday were more or less correct. It's not entirely on the contractors. It's on NASA too, but it's not... that doesn't mean the contractors aren't full of... like... You know, I don't... You know, like, there are people that really don't like NASA's in-house program, like Eric Berger over at Ars Technica. Like, he does not... He hates this crap. And honestly, I don't blame him. When $1 billion is just kind of like... like, it sucks because this... It gives fodder for people that want commercial to replace NASA and NASA's system for doing things, right, with an entirely commercial solution, right? And that will get us further into space in the interim amount of time. But once again, all the risk, commercials taking all the risk at that point. And where NASA's place in 20 years, if commercial is shouldering all the risk that NASA on paper should be, where their place is in the spaceflight industry in the next 20 years is very much open for debate. Because NASA is supposed to be doing the impossible, like what Jared says. And if they're not doing the impossible, what are they doing? Headline says NASA contracting officers exceeded authority on the one I have up. Well, we will just take what you said, take that quote, copy it, Control F, paste. Oh, it's page 24. Page 24 of the document, not the PDF. I got it. I got you, man. Sorry, misunderstood. Oh, I would love to dive into this. In support of the, I will leave on this note. In support of the SLS program, 3 contracting officers entered into negotiations or contractual obligations with companies that far exceeded the limit of their warrants. In addition, 2 other contracting officers increased the value of contracts for task orders already awarded. Oh, that's very illegal. Yeah. You. A practice that has since been ended as a result of an OIG investigation and related management referral. Consequently, several executed contracts and contract modifications are considered unauthorized commitments and must be ratified in order to constitute valid government obligation. Oh, this ratification process will require additional negotiations with various SLS contracts that could increase costs for... Oh, you stupid motherfuckers, dude. Brother. I'm adding this one in case it comes up. Okay. Thanks for the deep diving with us. Well, hey, thanks for doing it with me, dudes. At what point do lawyers get involved? I don't know. It's disgusting behavior. I'm ashamed to share the same country as these people. The people that whoever did this. I'm ashamed. That's disgusting behavior. Yeah, it's gross. I was about to say something I shouldn't. I'll keep my mouth shut. There's a lot of things I would do before defrauding the government, all right? And that's from that's on sheer ethical principle. That's all I'm going to say. I got to go. I linked all this stuff just in case it comes up. Yeah. Fiery little space news, baby. And we got to see a rocket launch. All right. So we're going to keep talking about this in a discussion with two of my buddies that are also spaceflight nuts here on the Flame Trench, which should be starting up around the top of the hour, so about a half hour from now. Enjoy the space tunes when I do it. YouTube, I'm going to shut it off because I don't want to double stream Flame Trench on YouTube. It's streamed on YouTube. I handle the Twitch end of things here. So on the YouTube stream, stand by for loss of signal as expected. On the YouTube side of things, guys, I'm taking it easy next week, doing a staycation, so my streaming schedule might be a little bit intermittent, if any, next week. So if I don't see you guys over the weekend, or I don't see you over on the Flame Trench, I'll probably see you at the very latest July 6th. That's just for YouTube. Twitch, we got plenty of stream left. Let's roll. So stand by for loss of signal on YouTube as expected, and stand by for the Flame Trench in about 30 minutes. I'll be right back.